All right. Welcome to this week's episode of Kuden Radio, the podcast for, Ninjutsu practitioners, other martial artists, self-defense folks, warrior protectors, right? Dachi Miller here from Warrior Concepts. I have James in the wings, as usual. This is it's another one of our milestone episodes. So thanks for joining in. This is episode 250. Yeehaw. All right. And since James has been around since, I don't know, episode, give or take, I don't know what, 70, 75, something like that, somewhere in that buffer area, right? We had like 68 episodes before kind of a reformat. And anyway, so we're on. All right. So let's see, just a little bit about tonight. So again, every week I do a theme for training through Warrior Concepts, regardless of whether you're training at the dojo in the advanced training program, our Shinobi Kai, or you are one of my inner circle students training online. My Nippo Masterclass students get a piece of this, which is actually a part of the theme anyway. So, we've done everything from energy conservation to exploring little things, but this one kind of springboards off of the recent release of the Ninjutsu Combat Matrix Guide. It's just this free resource I tossed out because for my upper level students, I want them focusing on the different lineages as strategic approaches to certain combat types. Okay. And so that kind of led me to thinking about, well, I don't know, how might I open this this episode? And something that we talk about quite a bit in my inner circle is this phrase that's used a lot, right? Something I hear all the time, right? I do Bujinkan. I don't know what the hell that means. I think I know what people are implying, as though Bujinkan were a style of martial arts, like I do Goju-do karate, or I do small circle jujitsu, or something like that, right? But what does that even mean, right? If you say I do karate, right, people generally understand what that looks like. Regardless, again, are we doing Kyokushinkai? Are we doing, Shotokan? Are we doing whatever, right? I mean, you get the idea. But when you say, I do Bujinkan, it's almost like a broken English kind of thing. But are you saying that you train in Kotoryu, Gyokoryu, Tagagi Yoshoryu, right? Are you a Koppo Jutsu specialist, a Koshi specialist? Are you training for battlefield combat? Are you training for self-protection? Are you training just because you like martial arts from this approach? We're a Hatsumi fan, whatever, okay? Because the truth is, if you think of Bujinkan as just one singular way of fighting, just to pull something out of the whole mix, right? Then, and when I say you, right, well, make this a depersonalized third person, because I don't want anybody's ego to get like triggered and butt hurt and whatnot. But if you think of Bujinkan as this one singular thing, right, then you're already missing the bigger picture, right? And that's exactly what we're going to break down during this episode. Okay, we're going to take a look at some questions, some common questions, starting with the most common question, believe it or not, that came in with the recent release of that the Ninjutsu Combat Matrix that I put out again, and we'll kind of frame it. I've been hinting at it and discussing it for weeks, and it took precedence over the other book that I just completed, because I'm not quite finished with a kind of a secondary optional add-on program on relating that, right, the Togakure Seishin Teki personal development, spiritual refinement, those kind of things, with what most people know of as the 7 virtues of the warrior. Again, we'll talk about that later. But because I've been covering this with my senior level students, I wanted to get something into their hands that was more representative of what we're looking at. And then again, it kind of grew into something that I decided to just release to everybody else. So we had just in the first couple of days, right, about 100 people grab it. So that's pretty cool. But we're going to go ahead and take a look at that, and we're going to take a look at these questions, and I'm going to answer them, but we're also going to take a look at some reasons that the questions are often like putting the cart before the horse, so to speak. Right. But anyway, we'll do that as soon as we get back. So let's go ahead and officially get this started, and I'll see everybody here in just a few minutes. So the big question is this: how are self-defense and success-minded people like us, concerned citizens worried about protecting ourselves, our loved ones, and the things we care about from the monsters we know exist in the world? How do we train in a way that gives us the skills, knowledge, and understanding we need without becoming paranoid fighters or killers ourselves, and yet still allows us to be the hero protector the world needs us to be? That's the question, and this podcast will give you the answers. My name is Jeffrey Miller, and welcome to Kuden Radio. All right, welcome back. So, like I said, I have James in the wings here, and I'm going to do things a little bit out of order from the way I normally do it. Instead of kind of leading in with an intro and whatnot, we'll do that. There's a lot to cover in, the time that we give ourselves, right? So I always appreciate when folks stick it out through the entire thing, but I also understand that, if you're not up for a, 2-hour, 3-hour discussion on deep level stuff, I get it. People have to work tomorrow morning, or you got other shit to do, whatever. Okay. So I get it. Anyway, James, who do we have? Who's already spoken up? Who do I need to return a hey, hi, whatever to? I think James is still on. There he is. Ta-da!
Looks like Trinity.
Awesome.
Maui, Jared, Sean, Merrill.
Cool.
That's it for the moment.
Any questions or comments or anything up to this point?
Not yet. People are just checking in.
Awesome. All right. Welcome, everybody. I appreciate it. All right. So hopefully this will be a good one. But if you did not already get your copy of the Ninjutsu Combat Matrix, yep, I put a cheesy cover on it. Got a ninja and some kanji and all those cool triggers that make somebody either look at something because it has the word ninja on it, or it makes them cringe because, like, we don't do that. Okay, so we'll see what happens. If you didn't already get it, James can put the link in the chat thing there. We're gonna offer it here for a little bit more before we roll over into something else that I'm doing. All right. So anyway, so here we are, right? This is a milestone episode for us, right? This is episode 250, right? What was that? Those statistics, we talked about them during episode 200, James. I forget the number of new podcasts that start like every day or every week or something like that. It's some ungodly number, right? But most of them don't last past episode, what? Is it 9?
Most are lucky to get past their first episode. Yeah. And then if they do, most never get past like 10 episodes before they disappear.
I'm just stubborn. So, and I'm glad that we stuck it out because some of our best long distance students come in through Kuden between this and Whiteboard Wednesday. And, when we have that first contact, they talk about having already binged watched or binge listened to, if not every episode, then nearly every episode. That's a butt ton of hours. Speaking of which, for those of you who are inner circle students or Shinobi Kai and whatnot, our weekly coaching calls that have been audio only since I started them. When, James? 2007, 2008, something like that. 2008, I think. Is that right?
2008.
Yeah. So that was my when I kicked off the first online training program. It was a 10-week, turned into an 11-week program on the Ninja no Hatsumon, the 8 gates of the ninja, because the premise was if we were going to be studying this thing, it'd probably be in our best interest to know what the hell it is that we're supposed to be studying. Right. So, but then when that was running its course, when that was almost done, then folks wanted to stay. They wanted to keep doing this thing. So that rolled into, and I don't know that I was the first person with an online training program with coaching with all these extra things, but I was in the top 2 or 3. So it just turned into this extra thing. And so one of the benefits that my distance training students get actually takes care of a major objection that people have as to why distance training sucks, right? It's not good, right? It only works if you're in the dojo, except that half these people, and I'm being very conservative and polite, won't travel to a dojo because they don't have one in their town. So like dojo training is best, but they won't travel to a dojo. So it's like, I only have one shoe on, but I'm going to shoot myself in that foot too. So like every step is painful. Anyway, so but the objection was you need contact with your teacher. Great, fantastic. Okay, so we have that, right? We have, and as a matter of fact, when COVID kicked in, we added in the live broadcast of the classes from the dojo. So we just keep adding stuff. And so, but one of the benefits is depending on the tier level that they're on, if they're at, and we're doing some name changes too, but if they're at the Ninpo Mastery level, they are getting an extra coaching call per week, right? Ninpo Master Class gets one per month, but these folks get one per week. And so that's audio only, right? So it's on a teleseminar service that I signed up for in 2008. And so we do Q&As, or I teach on other topics and whatnot as they come up. And if they're at the elite level, the Ninpo elite level, then they get both. They get 2 of these coaching calls. And again, they're audio only headset. They can either call in by phone and we can communicate in real time, or they can do it through a webcast kind of thing where there's a little text box and they can, text questions and whatnot. And I answer these things. So they have weekly contact. And of course, they're all recorded. So you can imagine doing 2 of these a week since 2008, with the rare exception. Now, some months have like 5 weeks in them or whatever. So I only guarantee 3 weeks out of a month, but I typically do 4 or bridge weeks where 1 month runs out like in the middle of a week and the next month starts right after that. We don't do any classes during those weeks. So anyway, 4 weeks per month times fill in the blank number, solve for X, right? Between now and 2008, right? So there's quite a bit. And, but we're going to be doing away with that service, not the coaching calls, just with the service, because we just recently realized how, I don't know if the technology they're using is outdated or what, but it's the quality of the recordings that get passed on to students who weren't able to make it or needed to listen in again and whatnot. It's just getting worse and worse. So since we're already tied into Zoom and we're already tied into Restream and things like that, we're just going to shift those things over to something we already have. And probably it's going to be Zoom just because I get the video and we can strip the audio and that kind of stuff. We can still do what we've always done. and that's going to start in the beginning of March, right? And it also cuts an extra expense that we really don't need to have with all these extra services and whatnot. Okay, so just a reminder to everybody: on your end, you're getting stuff for free. On my end, it's not free. Okay, so just so we're clear, right? Especially when somebody wants to bitch and complain, they want in the program for nothing, and then they bitch and complain that all I care about is the money. I spend plenty to make sure people get free shit. So we'll just end the conversation at that. But anyway, so Inner Circle folks, benefit still stays. Everything that we're doing still stays. And by shifting the things over to Zoom, there's some things that might be better illustrated during the coaching call or whatever with a video clip or a diagram or something like that. At the very least, I can bring up a whiteboard and, write things out or type things out or whatever, and make it easier for that knowledge to be passed over. So, and then of course there's a recording. So for those of you who have to listen to the audio because you're driving or working or whatever, that's okay. There'll still be that video element that you can get afterwards, just like when we're doing this, right? By and large, most folks listen in through the podcast services, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, what are we on? Pandora, all kinds of things, right? But there's still this video element for folks that want to jump on live and or since martial artists tend to really lean into being visual and experiential learners over auditory and those kind of things, right? Then this kind of thing helps, and they can also see, the fat old bald guy behind the voice on the recording, and if that's doesn't match their preconceived notions about what a self-protection or survival instructor should look like, well, then they can go look for somebody that has 12-pack abs and they're young and whatever, and they can make their assumptions about whether the level of instruction or quality of instruction or topics or whatever is exactly the same, right? Because some people are always going to believe that no matter what the price difference is, right, you get the same shit at Walmart as you get from custom manufacturer. So I can't change that. So anyway, let me just bring my notes up here. Okay, so as I said, we released this. Oh, something didn't stick. We released the this new guide. It's what, 8-9 pages, 10 or 11 with the front and back cover. That way, if you print it out, like some of my guys I already have, looks a little more pretty, right, on the front end, or just as you have it. But I also like things to have a sense of quality to them as well, right? So again, the point of this is for those who are transitioning from general strategy and tactics, right? The general principles and concepts that form the foundation of Budo Taijutsu and Ninpo Taijutsu. And they're listed in the guide as well, right? There's a page that just has those 4, right? Timing, distancing, angling, and managing, controlling, and working within the Kukan, right? Space. And then there's several frameworks in there besides that one, right? But there's this chart, there's this matrix. It's just a fancy word for a layout or a way to kind of organize things. And so because my upper level folks are now working on specialization, I don't want to say they're specializing in certain lineages. This is not like Kung Fu, where in some schools you go through a general kind of thing and you get a sampling of the 5 primary animals, and then at a certain point you have to pick one because that's going to take a lifetime to master anyway. What we're looking at here is recognizing that the different jutsu, right, the different approaches, skills, we just call them strategic approaches, right? Koppo jutsu, koshi jutsu, jitai jutsu, those kind of things, right? The value there is in how each one is a really good matchup for certain fighter types, certain attack dynamics or situation, right? Situational self-defense, right? Whether we're in tight quarters, whether we're in open spaces, whether weapons are involved, those kind of things. So that's out. And then there's another, at least one other framework that how to use it, that kind of thing, right? So it's very condensed, and it's certainly a high level kind of outline to give folks kind of an example as to where things begin, and that's an important point, right? This is a place or a way to give folks an idea about where this would begin. That doesn't mean that those the way I've matched up the lineages, that those lineages can't be used for other fight styles and systems and whatnot. Okay, so needless to say, lots of questions came in, which is great because anytime somebody gets a resource and it doesn't spark any questions, then either that person is not the right target or prospect or student. They're not the right fit for that resource, right? That resource is beneath them. Discounting people who think it's just bullshit right off the bat, so they got it so they could look at it and prove to themselves that it was bullshit. But any lesson should produce more questions. Okay. Because the reality is, if we really understand the problem solution process, right? Anytime we solve a problem, and this is what really frustrates a lot of folks because they want life to be nice and cut and dry and pretty and sterile and that kind of stuff, and it just doesn't work that way. Anytime we solve any given problem, right, we almost instantly have another problem. Okay. For instance, if now I don't, however, if I had I don't have a girlfriend problem, and I'd like to have a girlfriend, right? Well, okay, so I have to figure out how to go about doing that. But as soon as I get a girlfriend, now I have a different problem, right? How to keep that girlfriend. Okay. And again, this is from a very high level strategic perspective. The problem that most people run into is they get the girlfriend or they get the wife or they get the job or whatever, and then they go back to being lazy, right? Because they make this assumption that it's a forever thing. Okay. It's like earning your black belt when you're 9 and then you're 39 and telling somebody, oh, I already have a black belt. I don't need to train in your classes. Oh, okay. Well, where do you train? Well, I don't train anymore. Oh, okay. Like, when did you get your black belt? Well, 30 years ago. Okay. Well, okay. So you're not a black belt, right? You earned a black belt at some point, but no. Okay. So if we can approach things, if we're going to approach things from a strategic standpoint, then we need to understand that as a basic premise. Okay. And so anyway, we've got a lot to go into, and a lot of this stuff is going to kind of bubble to the surface, but needless to say that there were many questions, right? And so my goal for this episode is pretty much a Q&A. Now I'm going to open it up, and if folks have questions that did not come in, because I have, I think, 5 or 6 of the bigger ones that came in. So if you have one that's not on there, we'll have some time at the end that we can field these, right? But my major goal for this episode is to break misconceptions about the Ninjutsu combat matrix itself, and to provide some strategic insights into the approach, right? There's a couple of really, really big ones that really stand out. Okay. So, but just go down a quick list here that I have my main topics for this one, right? The number one question is like the first one that came out, right? Was why'd you only list 7 of the 9 lineages? Like why didn't you list the other 2? Like Gikan Ryu and Gyokushin Ryu is not there, right? And some it was kind of an open question, right? Is there a reason you only did 7 instead of 9? Okay. And other ones, there was a little bit of an edge there, where, or spoken or implied uh, question, like, do you not know those 2, right? Is that why you left them off or whatever? Okay. So, I, I started out I was only going to do 4, which, because I was just coming up with some attacker types, fighter types, and self-defense situations, right? And so I'm just starting there, right? So the fact that you have 7, right, is, it's a huge shift. But no, I absolutely know the other 2, or know enough about them to at least touch on it in a context like this. But it's a small guide. It wasn't supposed to be like an end all to be all, right? But we'll talk about where those questions come from as well, right? And I don't mean the people. I just mean the kind of the perspective. Okay. I'm gonna touch on again, right? Something that's front and center, or at least very predominant there in the guide, which is this understanding that each lineage is an approach to combat. Okay. And so we can't forget. People like to quote these 9 schools. They like, we got all this, and they'll brag about it. And like, most people only learn one style, and we've got all these. But then they go and say something like, I do Bujinkan. What the hell does that mean? That's like, I get dressed in the morning. And what do you do with that activity? Well, for some people, maybe they got dressed in the morning 6 days ago and haven't changed their pajamas since. And so they're out in pajamas and slippers, and it looks it, right? And other people are dressing for the goals and tasks for the day and what they need to accomplish, whether it's working on the car or mowing the grass, or meeting with C-level executives in a meeting, or it's a day off. I'm taking the kids to, a park or whatever, right? So very, very different. Okay. I want to briefly discuss a goal that I have for my upper level students, which is kind of comes out of this jutsu versus lineage name paradox or paradigm. What I mean is I want my upper level students to stop focusing on the names of the damn lineages and start understanding what each system specializes in. Okay. Focusing on the jutsu, not the name of the ryuha. Okay. The only time we're going to discuss the ryuha is if we're looking at 2 Jutaijutsu lineages. Like I think most of you know that we have Shinden Fudo-ryu as a lineage, except that Shinden Fudo-ryu has 2 sides to it. There's an entire Daken Taijutsu school, and there's an entire Jutaijutsu school. Okay. So, but if we're talking about Shinden Fudo-ryu Jutaijutsu, and we're talking about Takagi Yoshin Jutaijutsu, is there a difference? And if so, what are they, other than the kata? Right. So, because we're looking at strategic approaches to dealing with problems. Okay. So, again, at a certain point in training, everybody should be focusing on Budo Taijutsu. I always say Ninpo Taijutsu, but the core principles, and then any kata that are pulled in from different lineages and whatnot, right? They're generally done with the same kind of flavor. right? At least in my world, right? I can't speak for other instructors. I believe that students can be overwhelmed by too much detail too early, because, right, I believe that new students should be focusing on, if they're focused on self-defense, then they should be focused on being able to handle this core set of problems, right? The most likely attack scenarios that are going to happen, and the fact that, at least here in the US, statistics show that 95 to 98% of assaults that happen every day, and by the way, one happens about every 11 seconds, to different degrees, to varying degrees, right? Um, 95 to 95 to 98% of them are easily handled by what we consider to be basics, right? So, but there's certain very specific attack types within that majority, right? And so I want to make sure that my students get those things up front. They don't need 2,000-year-old secrets, right, to defend against these things. Okay, there are certain core things that they need to get, right? And so that's the focus, like all the way up to Shodan. Do they get little hints or little lessons here or there about this lineage or that lineage? Yeah, of course, right? Beginning in module 2, we have everything divided by modules between white belt and black belt. I know it's not the traditional Japanese way of doing things, but it allows me to organize things in a way that focuses on problem solution, right? And so it's the way I choose to do it. So module 1 tends to be, let's handle these things, right? So if somebody doesn't stick it out beyond that 4 to 6 month period, and they get that stuff, then I'm pretty satisfied that they have answers, at least 2, for each of the statistically proven or outlined or whatever attack types, different types of grabs, different types of punches, those kind of things, right? And so, but it also acts as a sampling of things to come that will be expanded on over the course of 4 to 6 months, depending on whether they're doing dojo training or they're doing self-training. And when I say 4 to 6 months, that's the average. Some students might take 8 or 9 months, depending on training consistency, focus, understanding, overcoming challenges, whatever, right? So, but there's a sampling of things to come that we're going to expand on and dive into much, much deeper. So that by the time they test for their Shodan, which I just had 2 students do on Sunday, yesterday, then they have a full toolbox ready to start doing scenario-based training and start more looking at these different, start looking at more at tactics and strategies, right? So, but the goal is proficient self-defense against the most likely one-on-one scenarios from people that aren't trained, right? It's not a trained attacker. And if it is, it's somebody that took the yellow belt course and picked up a kick here or there, or that kind of thing, right? After that, and then I have some people that aren't satisfied with that. They want to dive in full bore, which is where Shinobi Kai program is, and inner circle and that kind of stuff. But either way, advanced level students, now it's strategically matching fight system, right? Our strategic approach to a fighter type fight style, not the same, right? Or defense scenario, okay? And what often surprises folks is that matchup, right? So, and that's one of the things that popped up on there, right? And we're going to keep coming back to this, what I call the cart before the horse issue, and we'll talk about that as we go. Okay, so again, I kind of gave you the layout of the purpose of the guide, which is just kind of a place for my advancing students to get started, and again, sharing it with other folks that maybe want to focus more in this direction as well. Whether they train with me or not is a moot point. Okay, I'll talk a little bit more about why certain lineages were prioritized, and some of them maybe shouldn't even have been put in there based on a piece of logic that I'm going to share, right? And we'll talk a little bit about how the different a couple of them. We're not going to go into it that deeply, but different jutsu represent different forms of combat control, right? And hopefully, I'll help some of you reframe your perspective on learning strategy versus just memorizing lineage names, right? Like, is that a Kotoryu kata? Is that a Shinden Fudo? Is that a Tagagi Yoshin? Is that a Kuki Shinden? Instead of asking, is that a Koppo Jutsu? Is that a Dakantai Jutsu? Is that a Jutai Jutsu? Is that a, right? That kind of thing, right? What is the system of combat, not the brand name? When we go to the goddamn store to buy spaghetti sauce, we might have a favorite brand name, but if they're out of our favorite brand name, we're going to grab another jar of spaghetti sauce because the plan was to make spaghetti. We're probably not going to grab a jar of prunes, right? So it's that kind of idea, all right? So anyway, right? Again, I'm had something pop up on my screen here. So I got a bunch of notes, right? So here's where I really want to start with this, right? Kind of on a personal note. If I had truly understood what I am about to share during this episode, right, sooner, right, before I started working in law enforcement. Well, I was a military cop when I actually started in this art. So I was 18, 19 years old, right? And that was in 80, 81. It was a kind of it's a crossover year kind of thing there, right? And then, and that was actually almost 6 years after I got started in the martial arts in what was then called junior high school, right? So in a few years, I went through a bunch of different systems before landing here, right? But if I had this stuff when, right, I was working in law enforcement um, during my time as a military cop, and then after that, right, before all those years spent doing other undercover stuff and uh, bodyguard work, private investigation, those kind of things, right? It would have changed everything. Okay. Now, don't get me wrong, right? Ninjutsu has served me well in real world high risk situations, right? I used it quite a bit during those times. Okay. But there's a hard truth that took me years, right, of practical experience to fully grasp, to fully get my head wrapped around, to fully understand, so that I can apply it, right? And that's what I want to share, okay? So hopefully you don't have to waste the same amount of time the way I did, okay? So the hard lesson that I learned not really too late, but later, right? That really was the game changer, right? Is that early on, like a lot of people, right? I trained technique after technique, right? I worked through kata, drilled movements, self-defense scenarios, one henka after another, right? Believing that when the time came, right, my skills would just activate, right? And it's not that techniques and skills didn't come out, right? They did, right? But in some scenarios, uh, I, and this is not a bell ringing kind of thing. I haven't lost one. Okay, good thing, because some of them were pretty freaking hairy. But um, there were a couple where I had to let's just say I had to try several things before I hit on something that worked. Okay. Because I was doing technique substitution. I was doing, uh, this direct engagement kind of thing that is just not a big ninjutsu thing. It's not that some of the lineages don't do it, right? And so therefore ninjutsu obviously does now, right? As a matter of fact, James and I were having this discussion earlier on this evening uh, about this stuff, and one of the things that I said was ninjutsu today, right, is way more powerful than it was way back in the day. And I know how that's going to make some people's toenails just curl backwards, right? But remember that historically, Togakure's taijutsu, once they integrated with the Koto Gyoko schools, the Togakure taijutsu is pretty much a hybrid of those two systems, the Koshi and the Koppo, right? What do we have today? Well, see, once Takamatsu Sensei learned from his primary teachers, 3 of them, right, that brought these 9 schools together. Now we have 9 combat approaches and not just a Koppo or Koshi approach. If we're not just freaking cutting and running and tiny tabby don't fail me now and doing escape and evasion, right? So we have way more options to choose from based on the context of different scenarios, right? And we could spend a lot of time, and I'll do this during a different Kuden, discussing the differences between, and really needing to understand this, right? Battlefield engagement with these arts and modern self-defense, and some of the considerations that that have to be taken into account, right? And how the things that we think about or are concerned about, or the level of proficiency with techniques, or the end result kind of thing between battlefield and modern street or home defense or whatever, right? Not the same. Okay, not the same. So we need to be clear about that if we're level-headed and we're not just doing the whole bonehead martial arts is my life kind of perspective. Okay, so and again, what I used worked. Sometimes the situation as I understood it, right, and my proficiency level didn't allow for a nice smooth use of these things, and so I had to bail out to stuff that I had done before, right, and use that or make shit up on the fly, whatever, right? It was attitude over aptitude, so to speak, right? But what it really comes down to is that when you're standing face to face with someone who has no rules, right, someone who doesn't care about technique or form, someone who wants to take you out, right? And I don't mean in a good way, right? Buy dinner and all that. That's when you realize it's not about the moves, right? It's about the mindset. It's about the adaptability, right? It's about understanding the bigger picture and being able to strategically assess the problem that this person is bringing, or the overall problem that you find yourself having to solve or having to deal with. Okay. And again, my teachers used to talk about this early on too, and I would go, yeah. Okay, what's the next technique? Okay, and see, this is where most martial artists and even many ninjutsu practitioners get it completely, for lack of a better word, wrong. Okay, this is a system based on principles and concepts and strategy and tactics more than individual moves. Do we have to learn the moves? Yeah, there's a reason for the kata and all that. We've had discussions about this in the past, and we'll have them again. But one of the translations for the word kata is example. Okay, so it's how the principles and concepts properly applied against specific input, specific dynamics, specific lines of attack, those kind of things might play out, right? But it's a place to get us started, right? Like here's an example, right? And each lineage lays it out differently. Right? Kotoryu, it might be in packets of 3 or 4 models together, where here's the idea, and the idea is to move his mind around in the fight at different levels, high, mid, low, that kind of thing. So he never knows where the next thing is coming, right? He thinks the fight's up here. Next thing you know, you stomp on his foot and break a toe, that kind of thing. And then that sucks his mind down there because, he stomped on my foot. And in the process of him, or in the time it takes for him to think, he stomped on my, right? We're punching him in the throat, right? So we're never in the same place. In other ones, you get a whole string of kata that all point back to the primary lesson, that kind of thing, right? So again, it's done differently, but there's more to it then. Okay, we can have a shit ton of skills, but if we're in a wilderness survival situation and there's a storm coming in, I don't care if in our the framework that we give everyone, which is the 9 essential steps to effective survival. We have another one for first aid. If shelter building comes in at what is it? Step 4, step 5, something like that, right? Behind, what are we going to do next, and what's our plan, and whatever, water collection, purification, that kind of thing. If there's a damn storm coming in, then shelter takes precedence so that people aren't injured, energy levels aren't tanked, those kind of things, right? So we need to be able to think strategically. So here's the core pieces. We need to be able to assess the situation and apply them in the right order, and we had a whole Kuden on this. Energy conservation is the core principle of survival, right? So if I do shit out of order and it costs me more in the way of energy reserves and I can't put them back fast enough, right? I'm going to die. And between Hatsumi Sensei and lots of master teachers in Japan have used this phrase more often than not over time, right? If you get this wrong, you die. That's the crux of warriorship, right? And yet most people still approach this stuff like they're training for one-on-one fist fights at the bar on Friday night. Right? What are the consequences? You might die, but it's not the same. Okay. So how does this tie in? Okay. So to me, right, again, this is, I don't know, to be quite transparent, my show, my opinion. All right. So this is why the phrase "I do Bujinkan" doesn't mean anything by itself. Okay. I know to those people, it means loyalty and allegiance to. It means this kind of training. It means all kinds of things. But in and of itself, in the context of survival and self-protection, it doesn't mean squat by itself. Okay. So like when I was undercover, right, or working cases as a private investigator, right, I wasn't doing Bujinkan. The hell's that, right? I was using Koppojutsu to break an attacker's balance, right, before he could overpower me, or I was using Jutai Jutsu to escape restraints and reposition myself effectively, or I was using deception and psychological control, true ninjutsu, right, to avoid combat entirely, right, or to control the narrative that this person would be willing to open up and give me information that they would not normally give a stranger. Okay. So if I had known sooner that Bujinkan or Shadows of Iga, or even just saying Togakure Ninjutsu, right, is not one way of fighting, but rather a strategic system, right, for solving high risk problems based on combat environment, threat level, we'll call it mission objectives because I'm a combat vet. I could have avoided even more situations that ended up going physical that didn't need to. I could have ended dangerous encounters faster, right? And I could have controlled situations long before they became violent or before collateral damage happened, right? Other people got hurt. Okay. And so that's why I want you to take that's what I want you to take away from this episode, right? But I can't make you do that, right? I can just pass things on and hopefully it all works out. Okay. All right. So, I guess in a nutshell, the lesson for you, right, the listener, is that you can spend years memorizing movements and still have no idea how to actually protect yourself outside of what I call natural human defensive response. Okay. Caveman fighting, right? Or you can shift your focus now, right? Start getting your head wrapped around and get your training aligned with and focused on adaptability, right? And train for the reality of violence without being a one-hit wonder, right? The one style guy kind of thing, and start thinking about ninjutsu not as techniques, but as a combat strategy system. Okay, because in the real world, and I know a lot of you guys have fight experience. A lot of you guys probably are law enforcement and have things, right? Wouldn't it be freaking fantastic, right? If you could control the narrative, if you could get inside this guy's head and make him do what you want, or be able to recognize what his strengths are and exactly which approach to take based on that particular strength, because his strength might not be physical strength. It might be size, physical structure, frame, that kind of thing. It might be speed, right? Lightning fast strikes, kicks, those kind of things, right? It might be strength from perspective of getting a hold of you. It might be he's narcissistic and he's gaslighting and that kind of thing to try to control the narrative, blow smoke up your ass, that kind of thing, right? He might have hidden weapons you don't know anything about until they come out, those kind of things, right? So and we can start again thinking about this from this combat strategy perspective, right? Because again, in the real world, and this is my take on a Hatsumi Sensei lesson or quote, right? The person who wins isn't the one with the most techniques. Right? As a matter of fact, Hatsumi Sensei said again and again, if we only have one way of doing things, we're just a dead man walking from a warrior perspective, right? It's the person or the warrior who has more options, right? The more options we have in any given situation, not just in a fight, right? In finding boyfriend, girlfriend, wife, husband, whatever, right? In getting or landing the perfect job that would not just provide us the money that we need, but the lifestyle and the freedom to do certain things. Because I know lots of people that are making a shit ton of money, but they work 6 days a week and they're working mandatory overtime. So on day 7, they sleep their ass off. Okay, so great, making lots of money, but they have no time to themselves to spend it. Right. Other ones have set things up so they have lots of free time, but they're constantly bitching that they have no money for things. Well, we design our lives to the power of our choices. Okay. And for a lot of people, they give themselves one choice and assume that that's all they have. Okay. So again, it's not the one with the most techniques. That's not what I'm talking about with choices. It's the one who understands the game better than anyone else. Okay. So again, I'm going to break it down and hopefully we can make some sense out of this. So let's do this. I'll take some questions or comments or whatever at the moment. And then we'll come back and hit this. We're going to start with these questions, right? And we're going to hit the most common one, right? So, James, what do we have? Any questions, comments? Sensei, you're full of shit, whatever.
I think the only question that came in was from Sean. He asked, "What's a hanka?"
Henka is a variation of a, generally speaking, it's a variation of a technique. So think like if I were studying a foreign language and I learned the phrase, where's the dog? Okay. In Japanese, inu wa doko desu ka? Right. And so that's a pretty utilitarian phrase, regardless of whether I'm talking about dogs, right? Because what I'm really learning is to ask the question, where is fill in the blank, right? So, neko wa doko desu ka, right? Where's the cat? Um, Sensei wa doko desu ka, right? Where's sensei? Where's the teacher? That kind of thing, right? So, henka, uh, at a very, very basic level would be learning a kata, and then let's say the kata has, we're doing these certain uke-uchi, these uh, powerhouse counter strike kind of things to blast his incoming arms out of the way that when he's trying to punch me. And then I move in and strike his chest to break his balance. And then I stomp kick his ass to the ground, right? Sounds pretty cool, right? Yeah, got the name to that somewhere. But what I do is I change out the punch to the chest to break his balance with a kind of a tugging pull, and I lift a shin up into his groin or something like that, right? So that's a henka. Or instead of these blasting counter strikes, right, what I might do is these little swatting kind of things to pressure points that cause his arms to move and open things up in a different way. Or I might do the technique inside out. So instead of staying to the inside of the arms and hitting the chest with the kick follow up, then what I'll do is I'll move to the outside of the arms, right? So that changes the dynamic, but I still have to come in, identify a good shot to hit at the core to destabilize him, and then follow up with that kick to knock him down that way. So a henka, generally speaking, is a variation, right? Another definition for a henka is a bullshit crutch that people come up with because they can't do the form right to begin with. So it's their fallback before they have really learned how to do the movements properly. Okay. So that's sensei being an ass, but at the same time, that's exactly what it is. Okay. So, but it's a variation. Okay. Well, it still worked and I still won the fight. Yeah, I know, but is it still ninjutsu? Is it still koppujutsu? Is it still koshijutsu? Is it still what you set out to do? Or was it just a win? Because if it was just a win, then you don't need a freaking formalized martial system or self-defense system to do that. You just need to be the toughest guy on the mat or whatever, beating the shit out of the other guy. Because as long as you won, well, then what does it matter? You can call it whatever you want, but that doesn't make it so. All right. So anyway, is that it? That was quick and easy.
Yes,
cool.
Sir.
All right. So the number one question, by and large, was, I bet you know it, right? James knows it because we already talked about it. The number one question was, why did you only list 7 of the schools, Sensei, when there's 9? I mentioned earlier I was only going to name 4 or 5, and then that turned into 7, and I really strained a little bit to put some other ones in there, and I'll tell you why in a minute here. But it wasn't about the lineages first. It was about fighter styles, fighter types, okay? Because you can have 2 punchers. One can be a slower wind-up puncher because he's a bigger guy. He's more solid, less footwork, that kind of thing. He's naturally armored, right? Or it's wintertime, like where I live, and he's wearing a goddamn parka, right? And so, that's going to be different, right? And so he's just slower, right? But he's stronger, or he wants to get his hands on you and freaking manhandle you, right? Or he's like bouncing around like like a cat on a hot tin roof, and speed punches and squirrely, and he's all over the place and whatnot. So it's very different, right? Just very different fighters. Okay. Or you could have somebody who's boxer up top, like American boxer, Western boxer up top, right? Upper body, but Taekwondo-ish kicker bottom, right? I know people call them kickboxers. Okay. So how's that different from a Muay Thai guy, right? So far too often, and I used to do this too, right? I'm guilty of it as well, right? Because I thought in too big of a perspective, right? Like, the puncher's a puncher, or this street guy or boxer type that throws a hook punch. Yeah, I know, but hook punches come in tight forms all the way out to this big ass flailing thing, kind of thing. So instead of laughing at them, we need to pare it down, right? What's the benefit he has? Where are the openings? What are the weaknesses? What's the strength? That kind of thing. That's a strategic thinker. Okay. So, but we can have these different things or different fighter types within the same kind of attack type, right? Fighter type or fighter logic is often related to the system if they're going to look to learn things. Okay. Take a good hard look in the mirror. And what I mean by that is assess yourself and your personality type and how you tend to do things and what you currently believe about how a fight works and what your natural attraction is, right? I prefer to do XYZ, fill in the blank. Okay. That's what I mean, right? So you go out of your way based on that. You gravitate toward certain fight styles, certain teachers who teach what you already think is the only thing you need or is the thing that you prefer to learn or prefer to do. It's the place you go to almost instinctively, right? As soon as a fight starts or whatever, right? And if you're not a physical fighter, look at the psychological one. Okay. Anyway, but the number one thing was why didn't you do all 9? Okay. So I'm gonna keep this rather short, right? But the either spoken or implied was, what about the other two? How would we? Some people said, how would we match those two up to things, or whatever? Okay, so I'm gonna tell you 2 stories very quickly, right? They both have pretty much the same conclusion, but you'll see. A bunch of decades ago, because I just turned 62, and that means I've been doing this for a couple of years. There were a couple of seniors in our system, right? They're way ahead of me. I got this secondhand from a conversation, right, that happened afterwards with a senior who was on scene when this happened. Not one of the 3 people that I'm about to describe, but if memory serves me correctly, 2 of them were 6th dans and one was a 7th dan. And so they approached Soke wanting to know when we were going to study, or when he was going to teach them Gikao Ryu, Gyokushin Ryu, and Kumugakure Ryu. Okay, so just for note, for those of you who don't have the workbook yet, or the guide yet, or haven't read it yet, or didn't notice with all the skimming that goes on, Kumugakure is there, but it's not the way most people would think it would be there. As a matter of fact, most of them aren't lined up the way most people would think. But why aren't we learning those things, right? When are you going to teach that? So Hatsumi Sensei asked for a shinai, and he said, "I'll make a deal with you, right? I'm gonna do one single cut from Daijodan, okay, to each of you, okay. Whoever can get out of the way of that one cut, I'll teach you whatever you want, okay." Now, admittedly, these are his words. Admittedly, I cut a little faster than most, okay. But if you can, just a simple evasion, just clear the shot, don't get tagged, right? Teach you whatever you want. Well, 3 lumps on heads later, he handed one of them the shinai and said, "Why do you want to learn advanced stuff when you can't do the basics right?" And walked away. Okay. In another class in Japan, we were working on a technique, and folks kept asking. Noguchi Sensei was teaching, and they were trying to pin him down as to, and this is during a period when everybody was collecting freaking kata and all kinds of stuff, right? And that really distracted from the early days and principles, concepts, that kind of thing. But anyway, kata name, what lineage, what scroll, that kind of thing. And he finally just stopped and he just laughed and he said, "Doesn't matter. You can't do it anyway." Right? And this is that putting the cart before the horse kind of thing, right? People want details about shit that it's not going to matter that they have it. It satisfies ego, but most of them aren't going to do anything with it. Two, how does that make our ability to manage the bubble, evade properly, be on the right spot to do the next piece, to strategically control what's going on? How does knowing that piece of information make one's skill set better? Well, it gives me something to aim for. Well, if it's farther down the line, then you can aim for it later. Okay, that'd be like, running around with a firearm on a battlefield, and I'm worried about taking out Hitler, but I'm a continent over, and there are tanks in front of me. Well, that's freaking retarded. Well, how are we gonna take out Hitler? How are you not getting blown up by this guy? Let's start there. Okay, let's prioritize. Okay. So my answer to the what about the other two? And one person was in the dojo, right? And I did chuckle and I said, why does it matter? You can't do the other ones. Right? It's not that your taijutsu is not good. Your taijutsu is great. Okay. So you got you're decent with the core stuff that I want leading up to Shodan Nidan kind of stuff, but why do you need the other two lineages on there matched up to a combat perspective or a combat scenario when you don't know the difference between Kobo-jutsu and Koshi-jutsu if it bit you in the ass? Right? This is the kind of discussions that people get into online, right? Facebook, and get into argument kind of things and whatever. Great. Okay. So you know that Koto-ryu can do this kind of thing, and Koshi-jutsu can do that kind of thing and whatever. Okay. But what attacker type are those best matched up with? Right? What is it supposed to do? Right? Because by and large, 98.2% of students and instructors, all practitioners, approach this stuff like all attackers are the same. I know they know that, well, he might have a knife, he might throw a hook punch, he might throw a kick, he might grapple or whatever, but they still think in terms of they're all equal. I know one's grappling and one's punching and one's kicking and one's stabbing, whatever, but it's not all the same. It's not all the same. Okay. Like I said earlier, some are bigger, slower, but you don't want them to touch you, right? Some are grapplers, some are, whatever. Okay. Other ones, freaking, moving around and speed shots and whatnot, right? They'll hit you 2 or 3 times before you even realize that you got hit, and 2 or 3 times in the same amount of time that other guy is grabbing you and jacking you in the face, right? Gets one shot in, right? Not the same dynamics, not the same problem. Right? So, yeah, I get it, right? In the beginning, when we have you controlling the kukan, right, and distance, which creates a certain type of timing and those kind of things, right? And you're using angling and whatnot, right? We can stretch people out. But what about those situations where you can't? What about the situation where he's already on you, grabbing you and manhandling you, and your balance is already going and that kind of thing, right? And I know people's brains will race through. Well, I'll do this technique, or I'll do this thing, or I'll do. Okay, okay. What if I can't do a break fall because there's spiky shit, or there's a wall or a piece of furniture behind me, and so when I do that break fall, it catches the back of my head and snaps my neck. People like to play what if. There's a big one. How about that one? Okay. Or I'm out in the park with the family and stuff, and somebody starts some shit, and we end up we're near trees and all that kind of stuff, right? Well, these trees just happen to have exposed root systems that come up and whatnot, right? I do a break fall on one of these damn things and break my back. I'm not going anywhere, right? Hopefully, I'll be unconscious so I can't see or feel what he does to me next. Right? This is not the same. Right? The dojo is not the fight environment. The kata is not the fight itself. Your uke is not the attacker. They're all surrogates for, but this is why training has to change at a certain point. It has to be more scenario based with more variables than A throws tsuki and I uke nagash and then. Wasn't that fucking wonderful? Okay. It is to the beginner. Right? But proficiency and mastery, yeah. So just because somebody can copy Hatsumi Sensei's movement in the dojo, right, doesn't mean that they have internalized the principles and concepts that were hard won over decades that produce that thing. Just like a chimpanzee that's trained by an anthropologist to do taekwondo. Look it up. It's on YouTube. Okay. On command, spinning back kicks, all kinds of shit. But if you think that chimpanzee is going to do taekwondo in a fight with another chimpanzee and not just chimp foo, not going to happen. Okay. Because he's literally a trained monkey. Right. And we have to make sure that we're not just trained monkeys, and we're not just training for not that they're not dangerous, but this contest type of a paradigm, right? When it's actually a survival scenario, right? It's not the same. Okay. So my answer was, and it wasn't that he can't do kata from these other lineages and stuff like that, but you don't know the difference between Koppo Jutsu and Koshi Jutsu and Jutai Jutsu and Daken Taijutsu, right? What's the difference between a Koppo Jutsu strike, a Koshi Jutsu strike, and a Daken Taijutsu strike? Not aside from, well, that one's like for breaking bones, and that one's for like stabbing into soft areas, and that one's for, well, I don't know, it's for hitting, I guess. I don't know. While that's not true for the kindergarten level, right? There's nothing in the name Koppo Jutsu that says anything about breaking, right? It's not that it's not a part of it, but breaking doesn't necessarily mean that you're breaking the bones. That's interesting. Right? So what are we breaking? We're breaking structure. We're breaking his ability to fight physiologically, biologically, mechanically, and we're breaking his will to fight, because there's a huge psychological component to Koppo Jutsu that breaks his will to fight. It is about dominance. Koshi Jutsu is the opposite. Flanking, outmaneuvering, right? Exploiting weaknesses, okay, on the fly. There's more moves in Koshi Jutsu Kata than there are in Koppo Jutsu Kata. There's a reason for that. And the strikes are different. We're going to cover that during our Friday masterclass. Right? My plan is to do a defense against, or not a defense, a punch scenario and a grabbing scenario. And then the plan is to, with the punching scenario, looking at the difference between, we're just going to do a basic follow-up kind of thing. So Koppo Jutsu, Koshi Jutsu, Daken Taijutsu. kind of thing, right? And with the grabbing thing, we're going to look at two different forms of Jutai Jutsu, Shinden Fudo and Tagagi, not done the same, and Koppo Jutsu for dealing with a wrestler. Because if anybody actually read the book or read the guide so far, you notice that I lined up Koto Ryu Koppo Jutsu with wrestlers, jujitsu, grappler kind of situations. See, that blows things out of the water, because when we talk about matching things, most people would think that I was going to match a striking, punching, kicking system to an attacker who is a striking, punching, kicker. Why would I do that? He's already good at that. Okay? But why am I matching up Koppo Jutsu to grapplers? Because anybody that's grappling is relying on strength. Yes, he has agility and stuff, but he's relying on strength to manhandle, to not just control, but to pin, to just to lock somebody up, to restrain, those kind of things, right? And so that relies on a properly aligned structure, the skeletal system, the scaffolding of the body, so that the muscles that are attached to them can operate the way they're designed to operate based on those connections. So if I fuck up his structure, whether I break the bones or just break alignments, or I strike things in a way that stretches or strains or otherwise damages or weakens the connective tissues that hold, like the hip flexor tendons that hold the femur in the hip socket at the front, right? And I damage them in a way that he can't move his legs well, right? Or he can't gain leverage because he needs the legs for that. Then he can't do his shit. He can hold on to me all day long, but he can't do what he's good at, no matter how technically proficient he is, because his body won't operate the way he needs to operate. Right? Koppo Jutsu is not just about bone breaking. It's not just about striking bones. I used to believe that it was as well. Okay? So what is his strength? What is his advantage? Koppo Jutsu breaks that. Right? And if I can, every time I touch him, not only break his physical structure, but I create confusion, frustration, anxiety, that doom and gloom, panic kind of response. Well, that's breaking mental structure, because he's not so sure of himself anymore, and his plan just went to hell, right? And if I can break his spirit and willingness to fight. And see, here's the difference between a self-defense survival situation and a fist fight or a contest for winner loser kind of thing. Okay. In a contest, one of these two guys can tap out when he's done and wants to give up. In an actual warrior-based scenario, you can tap out all you want. This is not over until I'm done. Okay. You can surrender all you want, but that doesn't stop him from killing you. Okay. So when his will to fight breaks, he's stuck, because we know this, right? At a very subconscious level, we human beings know, right? And some of us have been there physically, like combat wise. Some of us have been there relationship wise, financially, whatever, right? Shit's not going well and you can't tap out. Nobody's stepping in, right, to finish this up for you or turn things around. So you have to keep going, right? You have to drive this plane into the ground or try to pull up at the whatever. Okay. So there is no tapping out. And that causes even more of a crushing, dominated feeling, because we know the other person is just taking us to the fucking cleaners. Okay. There is no tap out. There is no, okay, you can have my girlfriend. There is none of that. Right? And this is where most folks don't get it, because most folks, just like in self-defense training, knife defense training, as sucky as some of it is, knife defense training tends to be more realistic than gun defense training. And the reason for that is everybody's been cut at least once. There's a whole lot more respect for that thing. Very few people have been shot or shot at. So there's all kinds of freaking game playing that goes on in gun defense stuff. Shit. Dumbass shit. Okay. But it's the same thing, right? Most people have, not most, a lot of people have been in fist fights, more have seen fist fights or the contest kind of thing, right? And a lot of them, the things that they fear are still against that one-on-one kind of thing. And then that's the way they approach their training. Most people seek out instructors to teach them what they think they need, but most of them have no idea what it's really like inside of a really bad, sideways, fucked up situation. No clue. Because they haven't seen those, let alone been in them. And they don't know the right questions to ask. Just like, you teach your little kid stranger danger shit all day long, right? 99.9% of parents walk around with their chest puffed out and this big old smug fucking smile on their face when we bring up stranger stuff. And I know my kid knows all the stranger rules. Yeah. Okay. Why'd you teach the stranger rules to your kid? Well, so you'd be safe. Oh, good. Okay, great. Fantastic. Right. Your kid's like 3, 4. Okay, good. Why'd your kid bother to learn the stranger rules? So he could be safe. Your kid's not an adult brain in a 3 or 4-year-old body. No, he didn't. We know that for a fact. Science shows us that. When I go in and do presentations, the questions I ask makes that very evident, right? Your kid learned the stranger rules because it makes you happy when he gets the answer right. It has nothing to do with safety. He has no freaking idea what the world is like. And the way we describe strangers, they couldn't tell a good stranger from a bad stranger if it bit him in the ass, because they think all bad strangers are loud, they're mean, they're ugly, right? Handsome and nice looking people can't be bad strangers to little kids. And if we try to convince them of all this stuff that we know to be true, the picture that they paint in their head is this demon that doesn't exist in the world. So we have to start, if we're really doing stranger danger with a kid, we have to start self-defense in a situation where they realized they've messed up. They didn't mean to mess up, but they did, right? They're in the stranger's arms. They're being moved into a car, whatever. Okay. Because their little brains don't have certain faculties that have even grown yet, let alone get switched on. Okay. Like a 4-year-old lacks the capacity to ask an adult, isn't there someone at this park more qualified than a 4-year-old to help you find your child or lost dog? And because they know how mommy and daddy would feel if they were lost, and because this person is nice, and because they want to help, and because they've been trained to be a good person, they're going to help. Unless they're absolutely shy and fold and start crying as soon as somebody says something to them that they don't know, they're going to help. 10 out of 10 kids will go with the right stranger with the right story. That's the good news. Bad news is there's a stranger danger shit that's out there that makes all the parents and adults and teachers smug and feel great because they taught it. It's bullshit. Because they're designed for an adult to talk to an adult brain. It's bullshit. Just because a kid answers a question doesn't mean that they understand it. Just because we can do a kata really, really well, or we can do henka, or we can do taijutsu in a dojo or whatever, does not mean that we can assess a survival situation and do well. Because as soon as the situation changes and we forgot to cover that part, or that's our biggest fear or whatever, shit goes sideways quickly, right? He comes at us, throws a punch or two, we do our shit. Next thing you know, he whips out a knife. Whoa, where'd this shit come from? Like teacher always says, go get a knife so we can do knife training. Who does transition training? Some of us. Okay? So why didn't I put it in there? Because most people, it was useless information. Okay? Here's another mundane reason. I wanted to keep it short. Right? I just wanted to put some examples in there. Okay? And I wanted to give things that made people look at it and it to trigger questions. Okay? Kumogakure to you for multiple attackers. What the hell's up with that? Most people don't even know Kumogakure from, Cheez-It crackers. Right? I saw the name on a list. It's another one of the ninja schools. Yeah. Right? It's all principles and concepts. Yeah. If there were any kata, they were lost a long time ago. Well, we have principles and concepts. You should be able to take any kata from any school and do it Kukishinden style. What the hell does that mean? Yeah, good question. Okay. It's more psychological warfare than anything else. Okay. So I just put little things in there, right? This is not just added information. This is a shift in mindset from he does XYZ, I do ABC, kick his ass, yay me. I didn't mean for that to rhyme. Right? This goes from that to paying attention to what he's doing. Actively using frameworks we give people, mod 1, mod 2. Right? 8 phases of effective self-defense strategy, 5 Ds of effective strategic control of a scenario, right? Discern, defend, disrupt, deliver, discern. Oh, by the way, the number 2, defend, doesn't mean kick his ass. It means neutralize the force of his attack. Okay? So this was the big thing. Okay. I didn't feel the need to put all 9 in there because 1, it's an introduction. 2, I wanted to cause some folks to go, wait, Koppojutsu. That's bone breaking. That's like striking. Why are we matching that up to wrestlers? Good question. Why is Koshijutsu matched up? Well, Koshijutsu might make sense to people against boxers and Muay Thai. And yeah, but what do those fighters have in common? Right? As opposed to other types of scenarios. Right? So it is designed to get people to start thinking strategically. And it's also designed to get people to stop thinking about names. But for anybody that cares, I'd like to address those missing 2 lineages, Gikan and Gyokushin, very quickly. Okay? Because I know I created an open loop, right? And ego needs to close that loop to feel like it knows something. It has answered the question. It can move on to the next thing. So I'm going to help some people move on to the next actual part of developmental training. And I'm going to help other people feel like they know the answer and they can go do whatever they want to do next. Okay? Because my job is to help you. So depending on our relationship and what your goal is, will determine what that help is. Because I'm not a used car salesman. I'm not here to convince you to do anything. Okay? Because ultimately, each of us as human beings will do whatever the fuck we want. Whatever we think is in our best interest. And a lot of us will do whatever is the minimum necessary to feel comfortable and confident. Okay? Except the life of a warrior is neither comfortable or confident. Not that there's not a sense of confidence in what you know, but there's a whole bunch of what I don't know is what will kill me. What I don't see coming is what will get me. Okay? And from this upper level stuff, which I will be talking about with the Gyokushin Ryu, until we can control our own damn narrative so that it's not washing us away to make dumbass decisions, until we can control our own narrative, We're never going to be able to control somebody else's. Not now, not then, not ever. Because we're too busy freaking following our own whims. Right? Not paying attention to what's going on in the world. This is the crux of Mikyo training. Not paying attention to what's going on in the world. We're paying attention to what we think is going on in the world, what we want to be going on in the world, what we think is not fair about the way we think the world is operating, even though we have no evidence. All we have is other people who bitch and complain about the same thing. So that must be scientific evidence. Well, I bet we'd hear something different if we didn't surround ourselves by people who thought the same way, which is why we go find teachers who expose us to things that are uncomfortable and that are, or we feel or think are unnecessary or they're scary or whatever. Because if we find a teacher that's telling us everything we already know, what's the point? That's why most people think they can just be the teacher or they can just teach themselves. Okay? Ego is a fucking beast. Anyway, all right. So before I jump into a quick thing here on Gikan and Gyokushin, very, very quickly, again, it's going to be very quick. Before we jump onto these other questions, let me just jump back over here. So, James, any questions or comments that popped up during my little rant there about why I didn't include all 9 damn lineages, right?
No, sir. Nothing's come in.
So they're all asleep. Fantastic. All right. All right. So, and you and I had, we were having that discussion earlier and stuff. When we get through the Gyokushin thing, that'd be a good time for, I'm going to let you do that. Tell that little story that you told about the hacker, right? In kind of a modern context of doing the exact same thing. Because a lot of folks, they're physically oriented, and a lot of folks that are in that realm, the only thing that makes sense is technique training and being the dominant one and beating the shit out of somebody else, and that's how you win. Doing psychological stuff and doing stuff that requires more aptitude and attitude than skill set or than physical skills, that they're averse to that from the very beginning because they don't want to think too much. Okay? Which means the strategic levels are going to be really difficult, if not impossible, to breach. And this is not knocking anybody. It's just, we do what we do. So let me get to that point, and then I'd like you to share that story because that was fucking brilliant. So anyway, but that's what I think. That they might not. All right, let me get back to my notes here. So let's see. Okay, so the 2 lineages that I left off, right, that people want to know about, right, Gikan Ryu, Gyokushin Ryu. So again, right back to the common question, except that they didn't name the lineages. Well, I guess a couple of people did, right? Why were Gikan Ryu and Gyokushin Ryu left out of the ninjutsu combat matrix? Okay, the ultimate answer is they're more advanced, specialized systems that go beyond basic self-defense and conventional combat strategies. And if folks, again, can't tell the difference between Koppojutsu, Koshijutsu, whatever, outside of what a kata looks like, then not going to help. Okay. Most students aren't at a level where integrating them meaningfully would make sense. Okay. The guys that I'm working with at the dojo, some are coming almost at 5th dan. And so they really dive into this stuff afterwards. I mean, things get, and as they go up through my ranking system, things get more psychological and less, I'll call it biological, mechanical, right? Because there's only so many things you can do with a human body, and only so many things you can do to a human body. But how, where, why, when, that kind of thing, getting the person to do it to themselves, sweet. Anyway, so until we can get to that point, but for them, I'm having them understand the jutsu, right? The system, the skill set, the approach the strategy, right? And what that strategy does to the attacker's body, mind, spirit. Okay. And then how that's a good match in any given direction. Okay. So it's way less about technique. Okay. Yes, there are nuances within these different systems, but ultimately a shuto is a shuto. A fudoken is a fudoken. But where's it applied and why? At what angle is it applied and why? What's the end result? Okay. Is the end result balance breaking for the finishing move? Is the end result his legs don't work so well, and it doesn't matter if he tries to punch, kick, walk, whatever, doesn't matter. They don't work so well because we've stretched and damaged the connective tissue. Right? So what are we doing, right? Okay. So again, most students aren't at a level where integrating them meaningfully would make any sense. Right? And these systems focus less on foundational tactics and more on what we might call a niche, highly refined methods of movement, of power generation, and strategic deception. A bunch of years ago, mid to late 80s, maybe. I have to look it up. I got the video because brain was already scrambled to begin with, right? But on some instance, they did a seminar for a group in, I think, Arizona. Maybe it was New Mexico. Either way. And it was the Kyonapo with the flavor of geek audio, or from the perspective of geek audio. I couldn't see the difference. I couldn't tell what was going on because to me, everything looked the same. Okay. Now, if you don't know what you're looking for, you can't see it. Okay. But it's very, very, very refined, very, for instance, and I've shared this with some students when I talk about certain types of strikes, when I do certain strikes. And some of these elements get integrated into things, have integrated into my Koppojutsu, they've integrated into my Koshijutsu, that kind of thing, because they just become the way I do things now, right? A Gikan Ryu Shuto is not all muscle hitting. Okay. What if I got this thing on track and then just disengaged and let gravity and inertia drop this weight, and then just before I hit, I firmed up to make that contact. So now muscularly I'm doing almost nothing, but I'm allowing gravity and inertia and these natural processes to add speed, power, force, and whatnot to things. And then that tension at the last second is what creates the snap that people generate, right, in a lot of these other martial arts schools, except that there's no retraction on the snap. It creates the snap that's seen is an actual momentary increase in speed because of the way the muscles that are fired fire. And the power on the target is so much different. Like one time Hatsuma Sensei was demonstrating Ichimonji no Kata. That was the uke, right? And he's coming in with he actually moved to like a doko no kamae instead of doing it from Ichimonji. And he's coming in with this strike. He's doing it really slowly. And I remember the last thought I had was, oh, he's going slow. And then, like, have you ever blinked? You just thought you blinked, but when you opened your eyes, the world was in a different position. Okay. Like I was facing the Kamiza wall and he was in front of me coming in with this thing. And I blinked. And when I opened my eyes, I was looking at the ceiling. My brain thought, that's not right. Okay. So, but the feeling of that hand, like he did not pick up speed. He didn't press through anything like that. It was like very slowly, he just delivered his hand. And then it felt like he dropped a cinder block right here, like out of nowhere. And then we did it again because he wanted to demonstrate it again. So that was fun. But that went into my notebook. I have to figure out that strike. Okay. How do you go that slowly, that softly, and end up making the attacker, body, mind, and spirit, feel like you took a wrecking ball and dropped it on a point? So the question is, how do I do less, both physically and perceptually, right? What he's going to pick up. But the outcome is not just physically debilitating, but mentally, emotionally, and spiritually crushing, confusing. Like, what the fuck just happened? And then, then you can't move. You can't move part of your body to get up. Okay. So it's not the same. Okay. So again, since I didn't include them in the original breakdown, right? Let's very quickly take a look at these. All right. So let's start with Geek Out Use since I was there. Okay. Hidden power of precision and adaptation. Right. So very quickly, I just have a couple of bullet points. This is not a lesson on the Geek Out You. This is to satisfy 90% and get the other 10% to go, shit. Like I can't even do that with my normal strikes. How the fuck do I do that? This other thing. I know, had the same question, right? So what makes Geek Out You unique, right? Geek Out You is known for highly refined striking, footwork, and evasive angles. The angles are a little on the odd side, right? If I were going to sum up movement in the Geek Out You, I would say that it's more box-like than these diagonal kind of things, right? You almost move in a, but as soon as I say something like that, ego's like, oh, okay, well, that's simple. I just move 1, 2, 3, and I make a square. Okay. No, it's not a box step like you're doing a dance. Okay. It features a unique approach to power generation. Okay. There are secret kicks and footwork based strikes. Okay. It utilizes unexpected, non-telegraphed counterattacks that work best when a student has already developed a deep sense of timing, angling, and combat rhythm. Combat rhythm. Okay. But you already said timing. Isn't rhythm timing? No. Okay. There's 3 types of timing my students have to know for a Nidan, second degree black belt, right? They have to know the timing and rhythm of their own body parts as a machine, right? So there's a timing for this to move into position that's different from this because this is longer. Longer gears and pieces move slower than shorter ones, okay? And that's different from shoulder to hip, right? Okay. They have to know the timing to match or disrupt the assailant's attack, mirroring or disrupting that mirroring. And they have to be able to sense what we typically call ritsudo, the breath of the fight, this back and forth give and take, but also the transition from defender to attacker, not good guy to bad guy. Attacker is the person throwing an attack. The defender is the person receiving and neutralizing the attack. Okay. This sense, right, to be able to ride that. Okay. There's 3 aspects to that. Right. So what else do I have here? Its movements are subtle and deceptive, making it difficult for opponents to predict or counter. Okay. So it's not tricky for the sake of being tricky. Like, oh, look over here so I can punch you with this one. It's not that adolescent bullshit. Okay. Why it's not in the Matrix, right? Yet. Okay. It's too specialized for general self-defense. Okay. Unlike Kotoryu, right? Brutal structural breaking, or Gyokoryu's like foundational control tactics kind of thing. Gikan is a refinement art that assumes the practitioner already knows how to dominate a fight. Okay. So this is, how do I make my strikes more effective with less effort? How do I use unconventional angles that he would never expect something to come from, right? And make that happen. Right? It's very different. Okay. So this is like, from my notes, right? There's only like 5 kata. 5 kata, Gikan. No, I don't even. Yeah, I think there's 5, maybe. I think I only have 3 of the 5, but they're just they encapsulate the principles and concepts. And again, here's another one of those schools where you're supposed to be able to take any kata from any other school and apply these. Now you have what? Do you have Gikan style, or do you have Gyoko better? We don't think that way. Okay? We don't think that way. Right? So we're also looking at the difference between a combat art versus a survival art. Okay. While the Gikan contains effective self-defense, it's not about survival first. It's about mastery. Right? The assumption is you already have the survival shit handled. Okay. Very secretive teachings, very rare transmission. Okay. Gikan has had limited public documentation and transmission compared to the core combat focused lineages. There's just more information out there that folks could pull from, especially if they're not one of my students, right? That it's easier to focus on the other ones. One, you're going to need to do it to lay the foundation to do Gikan anyway, but there's just not a lot of information out there for it. Okay, so this kind of leads to the question: when does Gikan become relevant? Well, it becomes relevant, one, when you've already mastered distance, angling, structural breaks, those kind of things. 2, when you can see and manipulate an opponent's rhythm instead of reacting to force. And 3, when you want to move beyond basic self-defense into elite level movement and striking control. Right? Like, what if I wanted to strike a person into a throw? That's interesting, isn't it? It's kind of like a baseball fielder catching a pop fly in the glove, tossing right out of the glove the ball into the throwing hand so the hand can go, right? What if I could strike the person a certain way where their body's response allowed me to catch them, and their body's response to the balance breaking, which would, like if they were going backwards, right, that would pull them forward. I could catch that. So they're doing most of the work, right? So I knock them into the catch, and because of the way their balance is breaking, muscles fire to not fall down, and those muscles generate motion in the direction I want them to go. So all I have to do is help them. Okay. So there's a difference between that baseball fielder catching the ball, grabbing the ball, generating all the power to throw the ball, and catching the ball, scooping it up in the air so that the hand is already in throwing dynamic to throw it. So everything that's needed to generate the power for the throw for that distance is already taken care of when the ball makes contact. So it doesn't have to be generated first, right? It's almost like with a cannon, instead of having to load all the stuff and get everything pounded into place and whatnot, and then pull the cord, bang, everything goes off, right? It's more like a mortar, or it's more like it's more like, if you know what a mortar is, right? The round goes in, and as it comes down, it hits a triggering pin, and it boom, gets launched back out. So it's almost like a trampoline effect. But what if I held it this way? My friend put the round in as it's sliding down the pipe. I do this as though I'm slinging the round back out, right? And it goes off. Now, mechanically, it's not designed for that, and I would highly recommend you not do that dumb shit if you're working with a mortar. However, I'm trying to give you this idea that, like, there's way more pieces going on, and so a person has to, right? This is for bringing things into a mastery level. Like, you can hit with a shuto and like break bone or attack nerve points and stuff like that. But to add that little Gikan nuance, dropping that and then tightening at a certain point, ask any of my students that have felt the difference. Okay. Less movement, arm goes blasting away, balance is disrupted. It's a cool thing. But it took nonstop trial and error to get that right over the course of easily 3 to 6 months. And I don't mean like pull it out, try it, don't do anything with it for a while and pull it out and try. I mean like I used to like practice striking, and once I got that down, the first time I did it and hit myself, and I know I created like a hairline fracture or whatever. Like, I don't use myself. I don't use myself as a Makawara target anymore. Okay. So big key takeaway for you for this one very quickly. Geek Out of You is not about surviving an attack. It's about ensuring you never need to fight, right? As in struggle. Fight implies struggle. Ninjutsu is already about not that. When do we get to Gyokushin? That's going to be fun. Okay. So you never need to fight in the first place because you've already dominated the exchange. Okay. So quick here. Questions, comments, anything on Geekon? Not that I'm going to give anything extra, but James, anything? Or James still on? James still on. Any questions or comments about Geek Audio?
No, sir.
Okay, cool. All right. Gyokushin Ryu. Gyokushin. See, just memorizing a freaking list does nothing. We've got 9 lineages. No, the system includes 9 lineages. We, as individuals, have shit. Okay? We have to earn it. Okay? So, Gyokushin Ryu, right? This is the ninja's art of subtlety and deception. Well, deception. I mean, of course, it's ninjutsu. Subtlety. Let me tell you a story. I took, I'm going to miss her until my dying days. I had a student. Her name was Christy Schultz. Died a couple of years ago, suddenly in a car crash. I found out, like, just seeing condolences things online. It's just majorly crushing. Christy was this big girl, right? She worked with horses. Her dream was to start a horse riding stable school kind of thing to help people with mental health issues, right? Everything from like mentally and physically handicapped all the way to like depression, all kinds of things. And she and her husband lived locally. She got, I think, all the way to her 2nd degree black belt with me. Went to Japan one year. It's just a great person. And so we're in Japan, right? And one of the most common things that I was always telling Christy was relax, okay? Relax, softer, right? That kind of thing, right? Well, we're in a class with Shirai Sensei, and everything's about balance breaking and very subtle stuff. And we're sitting, and he's doing this little lecture thing to kind of sum up what's going on, and she's taking notes. I'm taking notes and whatnot, and I look over, and Shirai Sensei is talking, more subtle, very subtle, right? And so Christy, she's got this notebook with, has the big gap at the top, and then all the lines, right? When that big gap at the top, she has written the word subtle really big. And then she's tracing all the letters, making them dark. And I get it, right? She knew what she wanted to work on, and she wanted this to stand out so that she would remember it. And I look over and I go, oh, Christy. And she goes, what? I said, Sensei said, subtle. She goes, I know, subtle. I said, he said, subtle, not subtle, right? So something drew Shrey Sensei's attention. He, what? And I said, Chris-san, you said subtle. Hi, Chris-san, more subtle, right? And I pointed down at the paper because most of the Japanese instructors speak English and can write English almost perfectly, right? Most of them won't because they have the same problem that most Japanese people have, that if they make a mistake, they'll be embarrassed. Okay. So loss of face, that kind of thing, right? So anyway, I said, she's taking notes. Subtle. He said, hi, subtle. I said, Sensei, subtle. He looks at it, big, dark, letters and everything. And he goes, oh, Chris, subtle, not so subtle, right? And she goes, I can't even write subtle. So it was, anyway, really, really funny. So most people think they know what subtle is. Yeah, no. Anyway, so what makes Gyokushin Ryu unique, right? One, it's not a direct combat system, right? It's a system of deception and adaptability, okay? It focuses on misdirection, subtle body control, and non-resistance. Okay, non-resistance, kind of like Shinden Furoryu, right? There's a kata in Shinden Furoryu called Shizen, where your attacker grabs you and pulls or pushes, and it feels like he's moving the air, except the way he does it, you're very free in your movement, and so a counter occurs during that movement. So his balance is actually broken by your neutralization of the push or pull, so much so that he can't feel you move. So his balance gets broken. So there's no way in hell he's ever going to see the counter happening. But most people can't do that because they're thinking ahead about doing the counter, and it fucks up everything else. Okay. Like most people, they talk about being in the moment, right? They're so focused on being in the moment that they miss it. Or they anticipate it, right? So they're either too early or too late. Okay. There's a heavy influence from grappling and fluid evasion techniques, right? But in a way that prevents engagement rather than absorbing force. So you are not neutralizing the force. You're actually creating a situation where they almost feel like they're slightly behind, they misjudged and have to catch up. And now they're really stretched out. Okay. So again, in the early stages of training, when I'm teaching people this stuff, and all the way up to like Nidan, right? I start to borderline on this stuff for Sandan. I'll cover some of these things, like when somebody reaches out to grab, right? In Gyokushin, using a Gyokushin refinement to normal stuff, we'd be drifting with it, right? If you move too soon, he's just going to shortcut it and turn it into something else. If you're too late, the grab will move you in a way that you're going to have to neutralize the force. So I want to drift with it so he gets it, but he's compromised, but not so much where he knows it and he just needs to take a step to fix it. See, this is not just, if I do this kata, I've learned something Gyokushin like. No. Okay. It uses deception, psychological control, and environmental manipulation to avoid conflict altogether or to dictate the terms of engagement. This is, if this is going to turn physical, he's going to have to fight me my way rather than me trying to fight him his way or adapt to his way or whatever. Okay. But he doesn't know that I've controlled anything. That's the problem. Okay. So here's the question. How do I get somebody to do something that they think is absolutely free will, but they don't know they're being controlled? Because if they knew they were being controlled, they wouldn't fucking do it. Okay. Because there's one thing that we human beings have wired into us, and especially here in the West, right? We don't like being told what to do. It doesn't matter if somebody suggests or whatever, we will pick the opposite or we will resist. Okay? So, how do you develop the ability to control the narrative, get him of his own free will, right? That's his perception, to do what you want so that when you do your technique, you put him right where you want him to be. Again, one, he thinks it was all his idea. Okay. But you don't look like you did anything. Okay. And when you do your technique, he will chalk it up to his mistake, not you doing something else to him. See, if we can't do the how do I maneuver and manipulate somebody physically, how the hell are you going to do it without it turning into some weird ass woo woo bullshit? Okay. So why is it not in the Matrix yet? Well, it's not designed for conventional combat. Okay. So just an example, right? Unlike Tagagi Yoshinryu, which deals with like tight quarters fighting, or Kukushinryu, right? Which integrates weapons, right? Seamlessly into battlefield self-defense or big area kind of stuff, right? Kyokushinryu is about avoiding direct engagement entirely, right? It blurs the line between combat and psychological manipulation. Okay? Most students, in all honesty, right, do not yet have the awareness and tactical thinking required to leverage its strategies. And this is not exclusionary. This is not like you're not quite ready for this. So, right, I'll be more than happy to like teach some stuff, right? Just so that people run right smack into the mechanical errors they're already making, or the assumptions they make, or the amount of psychology that's going on, because martial artists are naturally control freaks, right? Because why else would we lead to learning how to do this kind of stuff if we want to take control of the fight, take control of this asshole, right? Take control of the situation, right? Always be in control of my life, all those kind of things, right? So here's what ends up happening. Teacher demonstrates something. You go to your uke and you're supposed to operate and go to Zen mind. Like you don't know what they're throwing. Okay. And so this is like Shinden Furoryu. In Shinden Furoryu, there's a concept, a core concept, Munen Muso, no thought, no action. Okay. Where you don't change. Okay. So Munen, no thought, means I'm not guessing. I'm not assuming, right? Whatever this guy throws is okay with me. Okay. But I'm not thinking ahead. Really difficult for people to do Shinden Fudo stuff because the teacher demonstrated something. So they're going to watch for that punch. So if your partner throws something else, it throws you off for a second. And then you got to recover from that to do something. Most people can't do anything. Some people will go to Kamai and the fight resets and then you reload and you try again. But in a life or death situation, guess what? You're going to have to deal with what got thrown at you. So if we just don't guess from the freaking beginning or don't assume that we knew, most students in upper, intermediate, advanced levels are still training like a beginner, watching for that thing because it's the kata. It's what the teacher demonstrated. Yeah, I know, but we're supposed to be developing skills based on, I don't know what the hell he's throwing. Or his tells are so obvious that I can read those things. But I still have to not ignore them, but leave awareness open so that if he changes midstream, said a different way, if he applies Kyujutsu Tenkan on us, because, you know, there's like when you throw a hook punch or a hammer fist, okay, your upper body and shoulder move the same as if you were throwing certain types of kicks. And so if I know that, this was one of the things I give to my Sandans, Nidans going to Sandans, that when you're throwing your attack, it requires a lot of mirror work, right? What things look similar? So how can I initiate with what looks like? I can create a tell that looks like I'm throwing a certain type of hook punch, which causes the weight transition and the body to set up so that the leg can do the kick instead. But he's going to be initially assuming and responding to what he sees coming because he's seen it a million times. And then he gets caught with the wrong thing. Well, he gets caught with the right thing. He responded to the wrong thing. Okay. But most people want to rely on adolescent bullshit, tricky little things, psych out kind of things and whatnot, which are fucking predictable. When somebody's doing something like that, just ignore most of that stuff because it's predictable. I know he's got his thing and this guy has this thing, and they both think that they're unique, but they're both acting like guys who drop the same freaking lines on the pretty girl, thinking that they're being unique, except that she's rolling her eyes and being a bitch because she's heard the same freaking line, maybe said a little bit differently, or the approach is different or whatever, but it's the same damn thing. When she was 13, that probably worked, except now she's 18 or she's 38 or whatever. And how many times can she stomach? Oh, yeah, beautiful eyes. Yeah. Okay, great. Is that it? Is that all you got? Okay. Have a good night, bitch. You want to be freaking unique. Say something she's never heard before because you need a pattern interrupt. Like, so what's with the lazy eye? No, just kidding. Right? I bet you get no comments on those things. That's different. I still said she had nice eyes, but I didn't say it directly. And I didn't even mention the fact that she had nice eyes. I started with something that was a pattern interrupt. Like, what the fuck? A lazy? Wait, what? And then I blew it off as, yeah, I bet you get no comments about it. But she's going to go all the time. You have no idea. Now we have a conversation. This is important. But if we can't get our head wrapped around that, and we can't do it on the fly, and we don't understand how other people, we don't understand how certain personalities think. We don't understand what is just going to fall fucking flat. We think it's original because we just made it up. It's the same thing with martial arts tricky shit. You want to be tricky? Don't do that shit. You want to be tricky? You want to throw somebody off? Move around in Shizen as your fight posture without your hands up. Because another name for Shizen no Kamae is Hiran no Kamae. It's a receiving posture. Okay. He can't read anything. Okay. See, that's completely outside the wheelhouse. He's looking for a tell. He's looking for you, trying to psych him out or whatever. You've already psyched him out. You made him look for something that doesn't exist. And now he's lost. He has no ground. This is Gyokushin. Okay. This is why it's not on the fucking list. How do I make up a fight scenario? This could be overlaid just like Giganryu. It could be overlaid over any of those things. It's not a technique. It's not a trick. It's not a specialized thing. It's a way of being. It's a way of controlling everything all the time. It's not doing something. I've used this before referencing ninjutsu in general. Okay. When we get to the point where this is no longer something we do, and it's so much a part of who we are that we can't not do it, Well, then, like, how do you know to do that? I don't even think about it. I just did something the other day in class, and somebody said, well, how do you, like, oh, that looks like, I don't even think about that way. I mean, I looked at my posture. I'm like, oh, I can see how you'd see that, but I don't think about that. Not about me. That's difficult. So Munen, no thought, no. I'm not looking for anything in particular. Whatever you do is perfectly fine. Right? Muso, no action. That means I'm not giving any tells that you can read that are going to come in. Okay, that's a big part of this as well. Okay, so what else do I have here? Blurs the line. Strategy over physical technique. The core of Gyokushin lies in manipulating an opponent's perception, not just controlling their body. You control the narrative. I said this earlier. Most people can't control their own narrative. There's no way in hell they're going to control somebody else's. Okay? Again, this is not knocking anybody. This is exposing gaps or things that we don't know we're even supposed to be freaking looking at or have any control over. I've had people, I had one guy one time, I had a session like this, and his fucking response on, I think it was a YouTube comment or whatever, is, I get it. All students suck. It's not what I said. I said, as long as most students do this kind of thing, right? I'm exposing gaps. Those who are actually wanting to learn something and move into the realm of mastery, which is the realm of the unknown unknown. Until we shed light on something that we didn't even fucking know existed and move it into the realm of the known, like, okay, I don't know how to do that. Okay, good. If you say I know something or I don't know something, it's in the realm of the known. Well, how's, like, me not know? You don't know how to speak Russian. Okay, some of you might, but pick a language you don't know how to speak. Okay, now you could not have said I don't know how to speak blank language without knowing that language was a thing. It's in the realm of the known. In the realm of the known, you have a choice. I work on it, I develop it, I move it over into the realm of the known. Or I go, you know what? That's not going to be my forte. I don't have time for that. I don't have the wherewithal for that. I want to specialize in other areas. So I will develop, as a good ninja, a network of people. And some of those, at least one, will be a specialist at that thing. So now when I need to encounter that, hey, I got a question. Okay. So, but mastery is in the realm of the unknown unknown. This is what Gikan Ryu, Gyokushin Ryu, and also Kumagaku Ryu, right? Exposes. You've been exposed to uncovering the unknown unknown. I mean, if you ever teacher showed a technique or whatever, or did some kind of combination or whatever, and you either said, like, I didn't even know that part. I didn't even know our bodies had that part, or I didn't know that was a weak point, or I didn't even know you could do that, right? You just move something from the unknown unknown into the realm of the known. Because mastery lies in the shit we don't even know. This is why I laugh when people go seeking out instructors or ministers or doctors or whatever to tell them whatever the fuck they want to hear. So we've already assumed ourselves God. I just need somebody to validate it and then give me a prescription or tell me I'm guaranteed to get into heaven or give me a black belt or whatever. Tell me how awesome I am. Okay. So it's not the same. Okay. So when does Gyokushin Ryu become relevant? Right? When you've developed full body awareness and can move dynamically without resistance, mentally, physically, or emotionally. Resistance. Okay. When you can control an opponent without letting them realize they're being controlled. We practice this all the time. Okay. I just gave a Gyokushin Ryu level psychological manipulation tactic to a new student, who's a parent of a child who is, I think, ODD. They're just borderline, right? Mom and him just had a screaming match for 2 hours. She wanted him to do his homework. I'm not doing it. Right? So anyway, we had discussions before this moment happened, but this was, I think, Saturday morning after class. My student came up and was like, fucking worked like a charm, man. I was like, holy shit. It was like magic, right? And this is like one of those really low level kind of things, right? He tells me the story. Comes in the house. Mom's like, yelling, I do your homework. And I'm not doing it, man. Well, one, you're 11. Dude, you're in some serious shit in my house. But anyway, right? In a whole different way. Because I just look at my kids and go, I support your strategy. You keep doing that thing. Keep going. Right. For other ones, I go 1, 2. Trinity's on. She knows. Right. I started this when they were little kids. Right. Okay. My kids got spanked when they were still in diapers. And they got like 1 pop. It was a shock value kind of thing. No physical harm, nothing. Okay. But they learned very quickly that if dad said 3, like I don't count multiple times. If I say 3, if I have to say 3, you're getting whatever the punishment was. I said that. Okay. So my kids learned very early. And I don't know, Trin probably still tells people today. Right. The only time my dad had to say 2 was when I did not hear him say 1. Because he never threatens anything that he won't carry out. So my dad won't go, if you don't do that thing, I'm going to break your legs, or he doesn't never say anything that he will not carry out as the or else. Please know that to be true. Okay. Unless I am seriously manipulating the shit out of you. Okay. In which case, just hold on to the first part. Okay. I don't make threats that I won't carry out. Okay? So when I say, if you attack my family or somebody that I absolutely care about, I am willing to sit in a jail cell with a big ass smile on my face, because you will never, ever, ever be able to do that to anyone else ever again. I'm not kidding. Okay? That is a culto. Where else would that fit? Specifically culto. Domination kind of thing. Yeah, but you're in jail. That's the better scenario. Because whatever I had to do, I knew what the punishment was, and I'm willing to go that far. And there's very few things in this life that I'm willing to go that far or to the grave for. But both people will know. For instance, and this is in the curriculum, okay? I need to see a Nidan who is a Sandan candidate. Again, this shit doesn't match up to the old Bujinkan ranking. And I'm saying old because I already know the new Soke are going to be expecting different things. Okay? So, Sandan candidates. The domination this is not a domination like in Kotoryu, the feeling in Bobi no Kamae, right, is if you touch me, I will kill you. You have to be able to convey that across space if you're actually a Koppojutsu practitioner from that Koto perspective, right? Also Gikan, right? Gikan, I have won the fight before it's even started, because when you look into my eyes, right? So I just call it the eye of the tiger. You can sing the Foreigner song if you want. But the look in my eyes in that moment will be, you better be willing to go as far as I am to have this work out in your favor, because you have crossed a line and I'm willing to go to the grave in this moment. I don't fight to trade shots and have bragging rights. I'm not willing to do certain things to other human beings for dumbass bullshit reasons. So if we're going physical, I have already decided that ICU, jail, or the grave are okay outcomes. They're okay outcomes. Right? This is the difference between somebody who's a fighter, who's got a chip on their shoulder, who is training to win those kind of things, and a warrior who's not stepping on the battlefield unless they're willing to die, which is absolutely possible every time something goes physical, which is why you don't do certain fucking things, because you have how many things in life are worth dying for? That's the question, right? So, but it's there in the geek audio as well, right? When you look in the eye of the tiger is not I'm willing to go all the way, right? No, the look in my eyes is you better be willing to go as far as I am. Okay. Because if not, wrong fight. It starts spiritually and psychologically before it ever goes physical. And if we can carry ourselves around in life, and this is not the guy who thinks he's tough, but has insecurity and those kind of things. So they lead with toughness to get there first because they're using intimidation as a way to get somebody to not come in their direction. Right? This is not the same as the person who has zero life value, knows they could die any day, and is willing to do any fucking thing. And if they have zero life value, you have less. So if you cannot read the difference between those two people, don't step up. Because one of them you can intimidate. The other one doesn't give a shit. You can't intimidate somebody who has nothing to lose. That's this high level stuff. Okay. All right. Anyway, let's see. When you're in a role that requires negotiation, deception, or the ability to read and manipulate an opponent's intentions in real time. Leos, law enforcement, security, right? Certain levels of management. When I say certain levels of management, right, I cover things like this for high-level training in corporate workplace violence kind of things, right? Because people think they're doing the right things when they're doing the physical security aspects of like termination or disciplinary meetings, right? That, they're worried somebody might do something or whatever. Making it isolated, keeping it away from the general, all that kind of stuff, right? Except that what if boxing somebody in is the thing that triggers them? Or, they're... Okay. So there's a lot more to controlling things. There's a lot more to physical security than just putting fucking locks on the doors, right? I had a company. Well, I do this most of the time, right? I had to get rid of all these extra freaking meeting rooms where they were doing this stuff. And when it came to terminations, they did it in one place. That room had multiple exits. We set up the manager. The room had carpet, and so it had a big table. So the way we lined up things was everything from scripting, but also pacing and everything, with inviting the person into the room, directing them to a specific seat. The manager sat in a certain place. The table was designed in a way, and the placement of the manager's chair put a big corner between where the employee was and where the manager is. So even going up and over the table was difficult because of the angle, right? And then the manager's chair was on coasters. The employee's chair, the coasters were removed, which means it made it more difficult for them to maneuver quickly, right? And to generate any kind of speed or power or whatever coming out of that chair. But it was easier for the manager to slide away from the table, rotate toward the easiest exit. One moved him into a hallway, one moved him into another room that had another exit, right? So the strategic thinking, the situation was controlled long before the person ever had a chance to, and even while they were deciding how they were going to attack, right? There were so many small pieces in play that they couldn't manage all of them. They could not get things going on. And the things they thought they could do, like navigating over the table or around that corner or whatever, the angles made the perception of distance and whatnot different, and the way they were set up relative to they weren't in a tight space. And the cool thing is they're set up in a way that they felt like they had absolute control, and they weren't being intimidated or anything like that. Okay. So, and this is what ninja do. This is, being an advisor to, the main security force and all that. What they're paying for is a mindset that they don't have. Okay. So the key takeaway here for Gyokushinryu is that it's not about fighting, right? It's about never needing to fight because you've already won before the opponent realizes what happened. Okay. This a couple of classes ago, a couple of episodes ago, I covered a Takamasa sensei quote. It's not about winning or losing. Victory is in controlling the narrative. It's in controlling his perceptions about what's actually going on, what kind of control they have, that kind of thing, right? People bitch and complain all the time about the powers that be, right? Controlling us and manipulating us and all that kind of shit, right? How about instead of fucking rolling over and sounding like a victim, how about if we actually aspire to having the same kind of ability? But that would require getting past our own sense of virtue as a victim, than actually developing any kind of real sense of power. And I got to tell you, I'm 62, arthritic, kinds of stuff. Right? The older you get, this is why people are has-beens at certain ages with martial arts training, because it's all about physical prowess. It's all about beating somebody down. Next thing you know, they can't take out the 20-somethings. I've had more than my fair share of people that years ago, they used to tell me, oh, somebody called my mom and name, I'll kick their ass. I can't help myself. And now, well, I'm more cautious about how I do things and stuff because, I don't have those same abilities and stuff. No, you should have different fucking abilities. And not just negotiating and folding, but secretly really wishing you were 20 years younger so you could beat their ass. All right? What ends up happening is life catches up, punches us in the fucking throat, and then we don't have anything left other than to fold and reminisce. We're supposed to get better with age, and better means mastery in controlling situations strategically and tactically, still getting what we want, still that person, right? They don't even know they were in a fucking battle. They thought that what they came up with was their own goddamn idea. That's awesome. Okay. Back to that parent. Okay. You know what I told him? Because he was telling me every time we say something, he just picks the opposite thing. He's just, I said, great. Okay. You handle an oppositional, defiant person, like a contrarian. No matter what you say, they pick the opposite side. Okay. Some can't help themselves. Some, it's just to make you wrong. That's most of them. Lead off before you say what you want them to do, or the idea, or the thing, like the group's going to do this. Hey, dude, how do you feel about getting pizza? Whatever, right? You lead off with these words. You're probably not going to like this, but we'd all like to have pizza. And so I know you're not a big fan of pizza and stuff, but, what do you say? Right? 99 times out of 100, they're going to agree with you and get the pizza. Right? And it's because they're still a contrarian. They're still oppositional defiant. But what did they just contradict? You're probably not going to like this. Not the thing you wanted them to do. So when he came to me on Saturday and said, work like a charm, right? Mom had been screaming. He had been screaming, not him, the 11-year-old, which I already have a problem with. But anyway, right? 2 hours. He said, I walked in, I said, Bud, you're probably not going to like this, but like the homework has to be done. I know you don't like to do it, right? But you're a smart guy, okay? And if you don't like develop some evidence that you're a smart guy, people are going to treat you like the grades you're getting for yourself, okay? So again, I know you're not going to like it, but how long, and as soon as you get it done, man, you got the rest of the day to yourself. 10 minutes later, the homework was done. What did the kid resist? You're not going to like this. So he, whether he liked it or not, he needed to prove the parental unit wrong. Great. I'd rather him prove me wrong about him not liking it than the thing that he needs to freaking do. This works 98% of the time against most contrarians. You just have to come up with multiple ways of saying the same thing so that, like, if you have to talk to this person on a regular basis, if you're a manager and it's an employee and it's a daily thing, you can't say the same thing every day. Okay? But you come up with multiple variations of the same thing that do the same thing, you push his buttons. He absolutely believes he's in control. He absolutely believes he's proving you wrong by doing the thing that you wanted him to do, and never gives it a second thought like, I just got played. No, not unless you walk away gloating. Oh, shit. Well, guess you proved me wrong. Yeah, I did. Fantastic. Okay. Most people can't do this because they're still grounded in resistance. They're still grounded in force. Most people equate the word control with force. And until we drop that, upper level Togakure, definitely Kumogakure, absolutely Gikan and Gyokushin. Talk about it all day long, but it's not possible. Okay. So, final thoughts just to kind of close the open loop I left in the book, right, or in the guide. So, why weren't Gikan and Gyokushin included? One, because the ninjutsu combat matrix is focused on self-defense and survival first, not elite level refinement or deception tactics. Okay? It's about meeting and neutralizing force. Okay? Two, because most students haven't yet mastered part of the 7 foundational combat strategies that are in there that they need before at least these 2 become relevant. Because learning everything before mastering anything leads to confusion, not clarity. So what are you working on? Oh, pretty much everything. Bullshit. Nobody can work on everything. And besides that, 90% of people that say they're working on everything, most of them are working on nothing. It's ego trying to, well, I'm working on everything. No, bullshit. You can't work on everything. It's not possible. Some of that shit requires other things to be in place before you can even touch it. Right? What are you working on specifically? If you're not working on shit you don't like, then you're not really working on anything. You're just like, it's mental masturbation. Okay? I'm working on my Ichimonji no Kata. How's Ichimonji no Kata? Well, you can always use some work. I could always get better. Dude, like, if somebody threw a punch at you, could you do Ichimonji no Kata fairly decently and knock him on his ass? Well, yeah. Okay. So what's really, really low on your list that you don't like doing? As a matter of fact, you really want to pull some stuff out and work on shit that'll really make a difference. Think about the stuff that you hate so much, you won't even let it be on the list. You don't even like thinking about it. There's where change will happen. Okay? But see, if we can't control our own narrative, how the fuck are we going to control somebody else's? Okay? People want high-level stuff. They're just not willing to do the foundational bricklaying to freaking get there. Like a building that's not built or half-ass built doesn't need a security system. Okay. So again, when will these systems matter? For those who stick with the training and get beyond certain levels of black belt, because I have these things like kind of scattered and whatnot, right? They become extremely useful. But until you've mastered distance, positioning, timing, structure breaking, control, strategy, like base level strategy, that kind of stuff, these will just be more interesting than useful. Right? So Eagle will be able to like recite these things. You guys now have bullet points, right? You can go and impress people, right? So Yokshin's all about this and Gikon's all about this. Okay. And you can even duplicate, or you can even act out what you think it means in a classroom full of students who don't know the difference between it and karate. Doesn't mean anything except in that room, because, you know, the goal was to impress those who know less than me. The problem is blowing bullshit up people's asses. What if some of those students actually do their study and do their research and then realize you're full of shit? Right? So the lesson here is master the combat matrix first. There's a certain order to things, right? And first, even before that, right? Before the matrix is for the advancing level students who need to focus on the jutsu as specialized solutions to attackers that are better than you, bigger than you. This is not an even fight. This is not a matched up thing. Right? This is, I need to pull something out of my proverbial fucking bag of tricks that is not a mano y mano kind of thing. Right? I know not only what he does and where his strengths lie, but I know what makes his skill set work. Like, you want to slow down the speed attacker, attack muscle based pressure points and cause muscles to lock up and tighten up and whatnot that he needs to be faster. He won't even realize that he's slowed down because he doesn't recognize that it's doing much. Disrupt his breathing rhythm, disrupt his heart rhythm, right? Like when you do the hard uke uch, right? The counter strikes, right? Gyoko Ryu, swatting, whatever, right? And you're striking in here. This disrupts heart rate, okay? Causes a back pressure in the arterial system and disrupts the heart rhythm. Not a lot, but that affects the way blood and oxygen and whatnot are getting to the muscles. It creates a depletion in the way the oxygen is being metabolized that comes in, which means also the way the negative gases are being expelled. It screws up the energy reserves, right? It tires them out faster. Okay. Striking the brachial plexus, right? Up here, okay. Or anywhere in here, hit this Kimon point, right? The phrenic nerve runs down through here. That stalls the diaphragm. So when the scroll said, disrupts his breathing rhythm, it's not woo-woo shit, right? This plugs in and makes that muscle work so you freaking breathe. Okay. So if I hit that, right, or hit the brachial plexus, it screws up the breathing rhythm. Awesome. Isn't that great? Okay. As a matter of fact, if I hit the brachial plexus way over here, right here, right, I catch the phrenic nerve and the vagus nerve, which are the nerves that create the phrenic nerve is for the diaphragm that causes the breathing, right? The contractions and whatnot for the breathing. And the vagus nerve is for the heart rate, right? You got one on each side. Okay. So if I hit those and the nerve impulses aren't getting where they're supposed to be getting the way he needs them to be, he gets weaker. He gets tired faster. Okay. So I slow down a speed fighter. That's Koshi Jutsu, right? Attacking these fine points, muscle pressure, that kind of thing, right? This is what it means to understand the jutsu, Koppo Jutsu versus Koshi Jutsu, Dakandai Jutsu versus Jutai Jutsu, right? Ninjutsu versus conventional Budo strategy. Okay. So I just covered a lot there, and probably more than I thought of. So I'll go down and do some of the other questions, and I'll touch on them very, very quickly here. But just before I do that, and then we kind of round this stuff out. Let me jump back over here. James, any questions or comments that popped in from those? Like, okay, I get it. All students suck. No, students don't suck.
No, no question.
The customer's always right, right? except in a martial arts school.
And Trinity said that the number 3 has never been heard.
Not that she recalls, because she was way too young. For those of you who don't know, Trinity's my daughter. Anyway, it's kind of that, and see, that points to something else, that there's this consistency thing, right? Before we can even touch upon Kids Tenkan as a manipulative psychological warfare kind of thing, where you're juxtapositioning truth and falsehood and whatnot, right? One, we have to be very, very clear about what's truth and what's a lie. But two, we need to understand personality types and this person and what they consider to be truth and a lie, right? Like, have you ever gone down the comments under a video? Like, pick mine, right? You know, you can get past all the fat guy, Santa, all those kind of things, but don't get past them, right? Pay attention to how easily distracted some people are and how quickly they will negate, neutralize, or ignore lessons because they are image oriented. So what that should tell you is, find out what they hold dear, show them those images, and they will follow you to the ends of the fucking planet. You can lead them off a cliff. Okay? Because no matter how good the information is, if the image doesn't match what they desire or what they expect, they'll never listen. Which always amazes me, to how much people still listen to the lessons that Hatsumi Sensei teaches when he is nowhere close to the image that they would have, or that they measure everything else by. And so what that tells me is, it is the fantasy or illusion about who or what Hatsumi Sensei is and is still capable of that has them lured along. Okay. But the other comments about what won't work, what's not possible in a fight, they've never done this, nobody's ever done that to them, right? Just make note. Okay. See, in an actual battle situation, if you had to defend against that person, that's where you go first, because they don't even look for it. And if they don't look for it, they've not trained to be able to deal with it. So that's your easy way in. But most people want to match up fight style for fight style. Oops. Right? Way back at, what was it? UFC 3. By then, everybody was going off to ground fighting camps thinking they were going to take on a Gracie who had been fucking ground fighting and doing that kind of jiu-jitsu since he was 5 years old, 3 years old, whatever. That's fucking stupid. Instead of looking at their own system and analyzing the Gracie's way of entering and those kind of things, and figuring out what we have and where the weakness is and those kind of things, and matching up things that way, the yin to the yang. This is all about yin yang, right? How do the puzzle pieces fit together, right? Instead of doing that, they thought that 6 weeks or 6 months of ground fighting training was going to, right? Talk about a ninja way of doing things. Jesus Christ. All the Gracies had to do was market the idea that all fights eventually go to the ground. Yeah, at least one person drops, sometimes unconscious. So at least part of the fight went to the ground. But you know what? A lot of us looked at that and went, bullshit. That's not my experience. Do some? Yeah. But all? Shit, not even half. Okay. But what did they just convince everybody to do that had spent their lifetime or years or decades or whatever? Learning a fight system. What'd they make them do? Fight in a way that was not their strength and played right into their strength. And now everybody's running around doing MMA shit and ground and jujitsu and all that kind of stuff when you got to get me on the ground first. And if I think you're going to get me on the ground, what am I going to do, James?
Click.
I'm going to lie down, pull my clip knife, and now you have to figure out how to fucking mount me or do anything to me without losing parts of your body. Well, that's not fair. It's not a fight. It's not a survival situation. I didn't agree to be here. See, everybody there's that assumption again that this is an agreed upon, let's see what happens contest. No, not the way I'm teaching. And if that's what you're looking for, these are not the droids you're looking for. Move along. Pretty sure I heard that in the movie a long time ago. Far, far away. Anyway, before I do that, we'll do some of those other questions some other time. I'll read the questions, but James had a really good story that fits in with the Gyokushin thing. And it was about a hacker. This was in another area. And this is one of the reasons why I think people really don't understand ninjutsu, right? Ninjutsu, a ninja researches like a vast array of topics because anything that can be used to win or to overcome overwhelming odds or to give us that edge or whatever, right, is looked at. I mean, it's the eighth gate of the Ninja the Ninja Hachimon, the 8 gates, these 8 minimum areas of training. Now, some things are going to change out because that was the technology in 15th century Japan, and that needs to be replaced with a modern technology that does exactly the same thing. As a matter of fact, James, remind me when we send the link out for this stuff or however we do that, or on the page, I want to put a link to the Ninja no Hachimon conversion worksheet that we have for students. Mm-hmm. We take the traditional 8, and most of them stay the same, right? But there's like three areas that get updated for modern technology without making shit up. It's the exact same principles and concepts. Okay. So I'll make sure that's on there so that folks can download it and have it for their training and look at it that way. And then if you want something deeper, you can always dive into the 10-week, 11-week course, whatever. I mean, you can do it at your own pace now. It's when I did it as a live program, it took 11 weeks. So, but anyway, we'll make sure that goes out. So let's do this. Go ahead and tell the story because it take a couple minutes. But this is Gyokushin in a nutshell, in an area that looks nothing like what people go looking for when they're looking for ninjutsu training or Bujinkan or whatever. But this story is like Gyokushin, just modern. Okay, so go ahead. It's all on you. As a matter of fact, let's make you the biggie boy. How about if we do that? Hey, look, it's James. Right.
So it was just a video I happened to come across. It was, I'm not sure exactly where it was. I think it was one of the hacker cons, and there was a journalist there just interviewing people, and was interviewing this woman that does hacking, and she also specializes in social engineering, part of that whole realm. And he asked her if she could possibly demonstrate what it is that she does and what she is talking about. That way he knows what it is and they can help explain to consumers and whatnot what goes on, what you need to watch for. And she goes, sure.
Yeah, hold on 1 second. Right? Mm-hmm. Back up to social engineering. What's social engineering?
It's basically manipulating people.
Getting the fucking population to do what you want them to do. They think they have free will. Right. And you get what you want.
Right. And they just freely give it to you. You're not, I mean,
Does that sound familiar? They think they have complete control.
Right. They think they're in control and everything is good, and they understand what's going on and know everything. And a lot of it, some of it, you're just flat out asking, and they're just giving it to you. So it's based on how you're going about doing that, how you're framing it, and all that. So for this instance, I'm pretty sure she called the company that actually held his mortgage. I'm pretty sure what it was. It was his bank. So the first thing she did was she went on YouTube and searched up a video of just like a crying baby, fussy baby kind of thing that was either significantly long enough, several minutes, or that she could just put on loop. Got it started in the background going, and then spoofed his phone number. So whenever she called from her cell phone, it came up like it was this guy's cell phone, which the system was automated to begin with, which a lot of people have probably run into at this point. When you call in, it verifies the phone number that you're calling is associated with an account. And so that's why she spoofed the number to begin with. So it already had a level of verification to it. She got through to an operator then, or whoever it was at the bank, and explained that her husband was away on business and they needed to like change the card or something that the payment was going to be made on. And she had forgotten to do it while he was there. And they have this new baby. And, she's really upset about forgetting about this and trying to take care of this new baby. And it's their first kid. And she has this whole story that goes with it.
And remember, the baby's crying in the background the entire freaking time.
Right. And she has the correct tone of voice and pitch and fever to it, like the exasperation of trying to take care of her newborn baby and deal with this because this could be a huge issue and whatnot. So ends up that the person on the phone ends up being just super helpful, finds out that funny enough, they're married, but she's not even on the account. And if they could put her on the account, that would be great. So she gets herself added to the account and gets all this information, and that way there's no future hassle for her if she has to call in again. So it's a little bit more time now, but it'll be faster for her in the future and everything. And by the time she's said and done, she has set up a new PIN on the account, a new password, had his old password, all kinds of information off the account and everything. And then of course when she's done, she's like, all right, I'm not going to go, feed the baby now. Thank you so much. You've at least calmed down this part of my anxiety and everything for this. So, and then the entire time this guy's just sitting there watching and he's verifying, and he's like, yeah, that's my address. That's my, cause she's just like getting it from the person and then just, oh, right. Yep. This is you. So you said you have this, and she repeats it back. And so he's hearing everything. And he's like, oh my God, that's all my information. Now you have access to everything that they have. And effectively could have just locked him right out of his own account then. And he was just so amazed that the key piece to him was just this crying baby in the background, put that extra emphasis on the situation.
Yep. And she was forgetful with some of the things too, right? And they actually gave her the information.
Yeah, she just acted like, because, and she just kept reinforcing, that you could hear the baby, obviously, noise in the background, but she kept emphasizing that, she was trying to take care of this baby, and, she was home by herself because he was away on business so she's trying to handle everything at home. And, she's really,
can't even get through to him. Yeah. All kinds of
got anxiety about it and everything else. So, like I said, everything matched the tone of her voice and the exasperation sounding and everything. Everything just fed right into it.
And that is a fantastic freaking example of Gyokushinryu. Because that person went out of their way to be helpful with an absolute stranger who had bits and pieces of information, but was probably dealing with some situation that either they've dealt with before or they can only imagine how frustrating that's got to be. And so they were just helpful, right? So when they hung up, they helped a wife with a new baby, right? Take care of stuff. They felt like a hero, right? He felt like shit, but imagine him not knowing, right, how to do that. So, yeah, very very high level stuff. But the the key piece, most people would never even think of. They're going to make a phone call and they're going to try to bluff their way through things, or they think they have to like jump through hoops and loops to steal the information or whatever to do things. And all it took was crying baby, flustered mom voice,
Mm-hmm.
and being forgetful at the right time. And I'm sorry, he normally handles all this stuff. I don't. I'm just I don't even know if I can get a hold of him. I don't know what the pin is. I don't know what the pat. Well, how about if we just you pick one and you're his wife, so we might as well just okay. And you can let him know what the new one is. Okay, I can do that. Cool. Now that wasn't an example so that you guys could run out and steal somebody else's mortgage account. Like you're gonna go. I'd rather pay like somebody else's mortgage. So, however, there is a huge thing these days that if you don't know about it and you are a homeowner, this is not an ad. Okay, please be very very careful. There are people stealing properties by getting the deed
Mm-hmm.
shifted into their name, and you could end up paying your mortgage to the bank and not own the house anymore because they went and said that you were a squatter and they've got the documentation, which is why, everything from mortgage insurance to some of these identity theft protection kind of things. These people can do this shit all online. They simply do a change of ownership. It's, so this is right. Part of Ninja no Kyomon, this knowledge thing, it's the counter to the Ninja no Uge, the deception, manipulation, influence, those kind of things, right? We're the ones as ninja that are supposed to be doing this shit, right? But you need to be able to protect yourself from it, right? Stop walking around like I do Bujinkan and I do ninjutsu, and I don't think so. I don't, because folks don't. Most people that think they're doing ninjutsu haven't even like barely scratched the surface, right? Because it's a mindset, it's principles and concepts, it's knowing things like, and you could half-ass ninjutsu and in the right context still know 10, 50, 100 times more than your target because of how you're applying things. But if we're only focusing on trading shots and it's this style over that style, it's very different. Anyway, let me let me round this stuff out and then get things done here. Okay. So anyway, like I said, our primary the primary question that just kept coming up over and over again, and sometimes it wasn't a question, sometimes it was an indignant like a direct or insinuated or inferred attack on my credibility or my knowledge or whatever. Like, there's 9 schools, you only listed 7. Like, you don't know the other ones or whatever. Hopefully, with just a little bullet points there, I put that to bed. But anyway, right. But again, the guide is a pivotal point for students to go from I'm going to call general self-protection Bujinkan, right? Or ninjutsu as a, we're able to handle a single attacker throwing pretty much whatever they want unarmed. I know in the guide, I did have a multiple attacker scenario, and that's where I put Kumogaku Ryu. Yes, Togaku Ryu could have been there, but I already applied Togaku Ryu somewhere else. I think I put Togaku Ryu at knife defense tactics. Not that other lineages couldn't be used for some of those things. Okay, that's not the point. The point is in understanding the jutsu part. Okay. Other ones that came in, some were related, some were kind of fringe or whatever. Like one was, why do some lineages seem to overlap in strategy? Like Gyoko-ryu and Koto-ryu both have Koppo Jutsu and Koshi Jutsu elements. Okay, well that's true. Okay, but one's a primary and one's a backup. Okay, we need to understand that Gyoko and Koto are complementing opposites, but it's the jutsu part. It doesn't matter if you're doing it. If we're doing Gyoko Koppo or we're doing Koto Koppo, it's not about the Gyoko or the Koto. It's not about the name, right? I go back to the spaghetti sauce thing. It doesn't matter if it's Prego or Del Monte or whatever the brand name is. A jar of fucking spaghetti sauce ultimately has pretty much the same freaking ingredients. They might just be at a different, level or measurement or whatever. But spaghetti sauce is spaghetti sauce, and it's not ketchup. They taste different. Okay. At least that's in the ballpark, right? I mean, it's not, strained peas for baby food or, whatever. Okay. So the common misconception is, if both Gyoko and Koto contain Koppo and Koshi Jutsu, why treat them as different systems, right? Aren't all strikes just strikes? All grappling just grappling, that kind of thing, right? So the quick answer is there's primary versus secondary specialization, okay? So Koto Ryu is Koppo Jutsu first, Koshi second, right? So there's breaking structure as opposed to striking, right? And what's the point, right? What's the point of the attack? Okay, what are we affecting? Okay, Gyoko Ryu is Koshi Jutsu first, Koppo second, right? So it's disrupting structure by attacking weak points. Okay, so one emphasizes destruction, Koppo Jutsu, the other avoidance, Koshi Jutsu, right? Koto, we're going to sum up Koto really, really short. Right? Again, take this with a grain of salt because there's a lot that goes into this, right? So Koto is about dominate and shatter, raw destructive power. Gyoko Ryu, avoid, exploit, and counterattack, right? So it's more evasive, indirect control, that kind of thing, right? So the takeaway I want you to have is same tools, different philosophy of application, right? And so that's why I matched them up to the attacker base or the attacker types or the scenario types that I did, right? Another question. Why not just use the most effective approach for everything, right? Okay, that ego wants to get to like quick and easy, okay? So again, common misconception, right? Wouldn't it be simpler to always use the strongest, most direct method, right? Why learn multiple lineages instead of just mastering one best way? The answer to that is effectiveness, quote unquote, effectiveness is situational, right? It's based on context. There is no single best method. No matter what anybody wants to tell you. Anybody that tells you that, one, theirs is the best method, or two, they've got techniques, like I'm going to teach you techniques that nobody can ever beat or whatever, run. Don't walk, run. Okay? Because they're full of shit, right? Our techniques can be beat, right? And that bullshit in a movie that people like to quote, right? I can always tell where somebody's coming from when they go, isn't it true that only a ninja can beat a ninja? Or only a ninja can kill a ninja? And I'm like, you've been watching the old Shokusugi movies, haven't you? Okay. So, no, it's not true. Okay. Ninja died all the time. Okay. Got bad stuff like skin flayed off their bodies and boiled in oil and all kinds of shit. So, no. Right. All it takes is a friggin' little bit of historical research. Okay. But the point here, right, no single best method, right? Combat changes based on the opponent, the environment, the conditions. I threw one in there that was a psychological manipulator. It's not a physical fight. So, and I did that to make a point that not all fights are physical. Not all combat is physical, right? while it would be satisfying to punch a gaslighter right in the freaking throat to make them stop, only one of you is going to jail. Right? Hatsumi Sensei said a long time ago, we live in a sad time when you can't teach somebody who's deserving a lesson, like somebody disrespectful, right? People that are wrecking your lives and stuff like that. As long as they don't violate a specific law, you got nothing. You could sue them, whatever, right? But now you're kicking up more of your own resources, more of your own time, more stress, more whatever, right? Okay. But the moment you go physical on that asshole who deserves it, right? You can quote me on that. Okay. You're the one going to jail because assault's illegal and gaslighting, lying, those kind of things. Not right. Unless he committed fraud and stole your shit, which is now theft, right? And then good luck because at least in America here, the DA has what's it called? There's a what's it called? It's prosecutory discretion. That means they can pick and choose what they want to prosecute. Yep, he broke the law, but yeah, I'm not going to do anything about it. So the cops can arrest the person, they can process everything, and he can decide, not worth my time. Okay, want to talk to somebody that knows? You can talk to me, you can talk to my wife. Had a contractor steal $130,000 out of 186. So he spent the difference on fucking up my house more, right? And stole $130,000, and 2 DAs in a row through prosecutorial discretion have decided, no, if you want to get something from him, you can sue him, but we've already checked. He doesn't own anything. Sorry. Now, they didn't even say I'm sorry. Saying kiss my ass. Okay? So now, if we lived in ancient Japan, some motherfucker would be in a bad way, and so would his family. But anyway, I don't think that way. So, let's see. So, again, effectiveness is situational, right? Okay. This is about strategic adaptation. Ninjutsu isn't about one size fits all. It's not about like that kind of solution. It's about having options to fit the scenario. The rule of thumb in this world of success, I don't care if it's business, finance, relationships, whatever. He or she with the most options in any given situation has the greatest chance of success. I'm going to put a little caveat on that, a little sidebar. He or she with the most options and the assessment skills that allow them to match the right option with the situation. Okay, this is basic game theory, by the way. If you guys, anybody plays video games or role-playing games, those kind of things or whatever, okay, the same percentages work out. Okay, in any given game, including life, 20%. We got that 80-20 rule, right? So 20%, give or take, right? Learn what needs to be known. This is not about manipulation. This is not about corruption and shit like that the other 80% like to blame it on. Okay. Does that mean there aren't some people doing it? No, but I found that percentage wise, it's more likely for somebody who doesn't know how to do things and is on the poor side of things. I don't care if it's emotions. I don't care if it's money. I don't care what it is, right? They're more likely to lie, cheat, and steal than somebody who already has success. Does that mean that no, but the percentage is lower. Okay. So anyway, so 20% will pay attention to what's going on and figure out how it actually works so that they can do things in a more streamlined, more effective, more efficient way. It's what we learn how to do in the martial arts world. Instead of just throwing a shit ton of punches, kicks, grabs, whatever, and, he's doing the same thing, and then both of us look like 2 6-year-olds in a sandbox slap fighting, right? We learn to control things that can be controlled: timing, distancing, angling, the bubble, right? The kukan, that kind of thing, right? Manipulating perceptions. And the more they do, right, the better they get. So what ends up happening is that 20% actually produces 50% or more of the total results of the 100%, leaving the 80% to produce the other. This happens in workplaces, right? Only about 20% of the people are actually working effectively, efficiently, not having bullshit conversations at the water cooler, taking multiple breaks throughout the fucking day, right? Working just enough to not get fired, all that kind of stuff, right? So about 20% of any workforce, right? People don't have to like this, right? This is well-established stuff, but it all goes back to game theory, okay? 20% produces 50%. At least, right? So what ends up happening is the 80%, right? These people they got all this extra shit because from you can't see the 50-50. What you see is, man, they're living fucking well, right? So see, the easy thing isn't to learn what they know and to do what they did to get it. Instead of asking the questions like how'd you do that, right? There's certain assumptions made. Corruption, bullshit, born with a silver spoon in their mouth, know what you know, it's who you know, all kinds of bullshit things because we're just going to lead with victimhood, right? And so if we can get the government or whatever powers that be to fuck them over, right? We're just going to steal all their shit. That way we have it. And then you know what happens? History has shown that as well. The 80% who doesn't know how to produce the same results to the same degree because now you've killed off or made destitute or whatever the 20% that was producing this shit. So the 80% can at least ride along on the coattails. What ends up happening is these people drive shit into the ground because it takes 80% to produce 50 at best. Right? So what you end up having is more people producing less all the way along through the chain. Now, within that 20%, there's 2 to 3% that produce way more than that 20% because they're paying attention to shit that even the 20% don't know about. That's where we're aiming in ninjutsu. Okay. And so even the 20%ers are looking at them like, except the 20% because they already have a leg up on the process, are trying to learn more. The problem is time, procrastination, laziness, aptitude, don't want to, doing those things are outside of my comfort zone. Has nothing to do with legality or morality or anything like that. Just, want to, don't want to, or whatever. And here's the other thing that most people miss. Okay. That 80, 20, 2, 3% are constantly changing. We hate the 1%. Well, you know what? The 1% change every year. The people in that bracket. Oh, and by the way, if you live in the US and you're making, I think it's $36,000 a year. It might even be less than that. It might even be 25. Okay. I don't remember the current numbers. Okay. If you compare that globally, worldwide, you are in the top 1% globally. Okay. So whether you get it from work or whether you get it from welfare, see, it's all perspective. Social engineers, like James was talking about, get you to be pissed off at people, keeps that tension going on, rather than doing what you should be doing if you actually want to succeed. Social engineering convinces you there's nothing you can do. So, you want to be a ninja? Stop being a fucking conformist. Excuse my language. All right. So why not do the most? Because there isn't one, right? So we're up against a strong, aggressive opponent, Koto Ryu, right? Because we're breaking their power base, right? If we're up against a faster, slippery opponent, Gyoko Ryu. We're redirecting and exploiting gaps, right? If we're in a tightly confined space, we're doing Takagi Yoshin Ryu, right? Close quarters control, right? Because it was designed for small inside areas and it was a bodyguard thing at one point, okay? Again, just to name a couple. Okay. So the big takeaway here is mastering one system makes you a good fighter, makes you good at handling one type of attack or survival scenario. Understanding multiple makes you not only more versatile and makes you more adaptable, it also makes you unpredictable and unbreakable because you don't get flustered when one thing doesn't work. You simply switch gears. Because you lead in based on your initial assessment, but when you make contact with the enemy, you suddenly realize, okay, this is going to work, or nope, you switch on the fly. Okay. But people, okay, again, there's a quote that I have from Matsumi Sensei, and he said it in many different ways at different times, but it's the same meaning, right? If you only have one technique, or you only have one fighting style, or one approach, or you've got your preferred way, or whatever, you're a dead person. You're dead. You're already dead. You just don't know it yet because you haven't run into the situation where your preferred approach won't work, or you haven't gotten old enough or injured enough or ill enough where you can't do that one. Okay. Let's see. Another one was, why match a weapon-based Ryuha? Because I matched Kukishinden Ryu, right, to an unarmed attack. Okay. I matched Kukishinden Ryu to just a general striking opponent. Okay. And again, the common misconception is, why would Kukishinden school, right, a school known for weapons, be matched to that? I mean, bring a weapon to an unarmed fight. That's an awesome advantage. However, right, I'm missing it. Okay. It's also for the same reason that during this year's spring camp that's happening in May, we're focusing on Koto Ryu secrets. So we're really diving into the Koppo Jutsu, right? And we're also doing Yari, spear. What the hell, right? Well, did Koto have spear? Yeah, they had spear. Okay. But my approach is always on, making things applicable to modern society. So spear. Yeah. Spear's a long ass weapon. Okay. If you understand how to manipulate a long ass weapon, that he can't see it coming, you can sneak it into place. You can do what the jutsu is about. Then you take those principles and concepts and put it into smaller weapons and put it into your unarmed stuff. Now you've got some shit. Okay. So it's a model that helps you lose the tells, lose the caveman shit, refine things down so that you can do that with a 7 to 13 foot spear that takes normally somebody who doesn't know how to use it forever to get the working end around to them, and you can catch them off guard. You can then translate that into a smaller weapon, a hanbo, a knife, unarmed. Oh man. Okay. Magic. Right? That's the point of the Yari. Now, Yari's also there because some people like the traditional weapons and there's a cool factor to it. So, okay. I'm okay with that too. Right. So we clarify here a little bit, right? Kukishinden Ryu's Taijutsu was designed for armor combat and weaponized movement. Okay. So heavy movement and powerful strikes, right? Designed to operate in armor, which affects movement and striking angles. Okay. Well, we're not in armor anymore, Sensei. No, but some of my Leos and security people and shit are wearing armor. I live in an area where we have 4 distinct seasons, and for at least a quarter to a third of the year, people are wearing thicker, heavier clothes. If you are, a contractor, utility worker, you're a snowboarder or whatever, right? And shit starts, and you've got big, heavy, freaking thick clothes on. Winter coat, parka, heavy freaking snow boots, big ass gloves, and all that. Now you have to create power differently, because if you hit his parka with your gloves, you do it the wrong way, it's going to be like when I spanked my kids when they were wearing a diaper. All you heard was air squeeze out of plastic. Okay. Nothing happens. Okay. They get a little bit more smug. Okay. Grappling with somebody when you've got shit on that's going to slide off of things and you can't hold, or the glove could slide off of you or whatever, right? That's why people will kick off their shoes and pull off their gloves and whatnot. Attack them then. Attack them while they're busy freaking getting ready to get into the fight, right? People watch this bullshit in movies and stuff. You take the shirt off, peacock and all that kind of. Well, he's fucking lifting a t-shirt over his fucking head. Punch him. He blinded himself, idiot. Okay. And hopefully you don't do that stuff because I'd use the same adjective. Okay. So there's a natural integration of weapons, right? Hand movements align with wielding sticks, spears, or blades, right? So why does this still apply to modern self-defense? Well, the structure and principles of weapon-based combat apply to empty hand striking too, right? It's just an extension, right? Kukishinden principles work against big, heavy, committed attacks, right? Think street brawler, think haymaker punch, or a power wrestler, that kind of thing, right? Guy's got big, like his upper arms are bigger than your freaking calves, right? Or they're bigger than your thighs, right? Good luck doing an uke nagash. Okay, it's just okay. Going up against a freaking big ass 250-pound, 300-pound MMA fighter who's used to getting hit in the head multiple times a week as training. If your shot can't affect him quickly, effectively, efficiently, without breaking you, need some work. Okay. So, like, if I'm up against somebody who looks like they've been in it, that means that their body is conditioned to normal impact. I have to approach that body differently. I have to attack it in places and in ways it's never been attacked before because those areas won't be conditioned. Because he's probably been in fights like everybody else, and the same areas get hit. Okay. Just like getting on a new job, doing construction or doing whatever, right? You end up with fucking calluses and sore muscles and whatnot. Give it a week or three. Shit. It's like you've been on the job for 20 years. Okay. Because your body got conditioned. It doesn't abrase as fast. You know, when you first start training, right? Depending on skin tone and whatnot, bruise really, really easily, right? If you're doing that kind of training, you bruise really easily, but eventually, it takes a lot. It takes a very targeted muscle attack, right? And then the bruise even looks different, right? You go from black and blue and yellow and green as it ages and comes out to like these weird pastel pink colors. Looks really surreal, right? But that's not fashionable anymore, so we probably should stop talking about that, right? So the takeaway here is even when unarmed, right? Kushinodyu movement still holds an advantage in structure and force redirection. Okay. Especially when like you can't have this person just like dropping on you or whatever. Okay. Go to throw one of these guys with a ganseki nage and you're hanging off his fucking arm like a bad cartoon from the 50s. Right. So another one was why not just train against realistic attacks instead of traditional kata? Right. Again, there's always people that jump into that kind of thing, like kata don't work and these traditions and whatever, right? Okay. So, again, common misconception is why train in old kata instead of just sparring against real world attacks, right? And my answer is traditional kata is reality based, but it's about principles, not just forms. The kata is an example of what the principles look like, right? And so kata is a tactical model. Kata were never about memorizing preset techniques. It was about internalizing principles of movement, timing, countering real attacks, right? So right, if we need to understand how kata evolves into combat, right? So again, using that shurihari model, but without using the terms, right? In phase one, we learn the structured kata. We understand the mechanics and how they reflect certain principles, neutralizing the force of the attack, redirecting and breaking balance, right? Which means he's now fighting himself or gravity or inertia or whatever, right? And then attacking openings that will manipulate him in the direction I need him to go, or at least break him down to where his body won't function the way you need it to do. We needed to be able to do that as quickly as possible, preferably 11 seconds or less, 4 moves or less. After that, you start losing quickly, okay? So especially against a bigger, faster opponent, okay? Because this is not a sport match. Sport matches, they match you up even to even. Okay? We're not talking about that, right? Nobody looks at you from across the street and goes, I think he can kick my ass. I think I'll jump him. Nobody does that. It's a predator-prey paradigm, right? They cut you from the herd. Okay? As ninja, we want them to do that and not realize it was a mistake until it's too late. Okay. And then phase 3, we're entering the true free form combat strategy. In some lineages, it's called GU, formlessly adaptive. In other ones, randori, right? Catching the moment, that kind of thing, right? And ninjutsu's adaptive mindset. Okay. So takeaway here, kata isn't about rigid memorization. It's about drilling adaptability until it becomes second nature. Way too many people don't drill kata long enough for that to happen because their crutch is henka variation, right? Because as long as it worked out, right? Well, that wasn't working, so I did this. You ever going to stop to figure out why that wasn't working? Because it's not the kata. The kata's a couple hundred years old. You're not. So it's been around longer. It's not about you. You guys are enlightened, but you get the idea, right? So again, right? You use these, as you want. Okay. During Whiteboard Wednesday, right? We're going to just springboard off of this. Okay. So we're going to do a tactical level breakdown. Okay. So what I'm going to be doing is, and I don't have it all mapped out just yet, but we're going to be doing things like comparing Koppo Jutsu versus Koshi Jutsu, Daken Jutsu versus Jutai Jutsu. One of the things I want to take a look at is like Shinden Fudo Ryu versus Tagagi Yosho Ryu, right? Now, Shinden Fudo Ryu, I can compare that with Koppo and Koshi as well, because that's a type of Daken Taijutsu, right? But I'm comparing what I'm going to be doing here. And this is what I want to try to convey to folks a little bit more is we're focusing on the jutsu. So the Koppo, the Jutai, that kind of thing. And the only time the name brand really comes in is, or when it becomes important, is when the approach to it is different. Like Shinden Fudo Ryu Jutai Jutsu is more of a natural response, go with the flow, no expectation, that kind of thing. Tagagi Yoshin is much more structure based because you're in limited space. Okay. So if I do something incorrectly, like in Shinden Fudo Ryu, it doesn't matter if I end up applying a throw, lock, or hold or whatever to take them down, because the implication is that I've got space. Okay. It doesn't matter what I do or where I go. But if I'm in a narrow hallway, or if I'm in between parked cars, or who knows, it's a truck stop and I get attacked in a friggin' bathroom stall, right? Very confined space. So I can't just like whip on a Gansek. He can just put his opposite arm out and jam it up, right? So I need to be able to, like a really good billiard player, I need to be able to call my shots. Okay. So very, very different, right? Again, we have to understand it to be able to use it, right? As opposed to, and by all means, anybody can just stop wherever. Okay. But what I was taught, and this is how I run my curriculum as well. Okay. Nidan, Sandan, Nidan, Nidan is what my students need for me to believe that they can defend against somebody on the street, single attacker, not a killer, not super trained or whatever, just doing whatever they want, right? And we're able to use principles and concepts, string our basics together in a logical flow to be able to, defend, right? So what it really comes down to is that anybody can get to Shodan, right? Learn the lessons, show up for class, learn the principles and concepts, that kind of thing. Even if you need to apply a little bit of extra force or pressure to make a technique work, what you have. You might be off so that the flow's not perfect, the timing is not perfect, but you can still make it work, right? And I'm still okay with Shodans. Like if they need to, they can fall back on their wrestling days or their Taekwondo days or whatever, right? Nidans have to be able to do that, okay? So anybody learns the lessons and whatnot can get a Shodan. Anybody that's willing to do the work and get the principles and concepts, so there's a comfortable sense of confidence with the moves, with the logic and things like that, right? They get Nidan. But after that, all bets are off, because now we're moving into more strategic application, more control of his perceptions and those kind of things, right? It becomes more about mastery and control, where that control is not obvious, it's not perceived. Okay, that everything from the way we strike to the whatever. Okay. So that's what I have. All right. So hopefully I'll see you for Whiteboard Wednesday. If not, well, no harm, no foul. Then I won't. And then from Whiteboard Wednesday, we'll springboard off of that and do a couple of examples to highlight the differences between these different approaches for the Friday Masterclass. So if you're already in the NIMPO Masterclass program, you're already in one of the Inner Circle programs, what we're now calling NIMPO Mastery and NIMPO Elite, then you're already in. Whether you can be there or not, you'll still get the recording. Other than that, then but if you want to dive into one of these things specifically, May 2nd, 3rd, and 4th is our spring ninja camp. And we're going to be focusing on Kotoryu secrets and that yachty, as I discussed. We have live things, and we have virtual options as well. You can do single day, you can do the full weekend, whatever. Right now we have just shy of a dozen people signed up. So by then it'll be a decent sized group. So James, did I miss anything? Did I forget anything? All right. So last minute questions or comments. I'll take like 2 based on time.
There hasn't been anything come in.
Well, maybe I talk too fast. My mic's on, right? You can hear me? You didn't just sit there staring at the screen the whole time watching me lip sync? No? Okay. All right. Well, hopefully I gave you enough to think about. For some of you, I hope I gave you enough to go back to that freaking couple of pages and look at it with fresh eyes. Okay. Because while it is a 30,000 foot view down on the sports arena, there's a lot in there that has to do with more about strategic thinking and tactical application than anything else. All right. I have plans for future Kuden. I don't know if I'm doing it next week or just down the line, where we're gonna revisit the same kind of strategic kind of thing, and look at how we're gonna go back to the roots of a ninja family layout, gaining field operatives, tune-in, middlemen, coordinators, that kind of thing, and the jonin, and how they would apply these things, because the specifics and whatnot end up having to change, right? And where things are. And if, whether you know it or not, you probably heard me say this before, if you've been on for a while, if not, then this will be a first for you. Students are not gaining, and instructors are not Chunin and Hatsumi Sensei or the Soke are not Jonin. Okay. Hatsumi Sensei was a Jonin, and Jonin teach their students to be Jonin. Chunin teach their students to be Chunin, and Gainin teach their students to be Gainin. Now, it doesn't mean a Jonin can't teach these other things, but the ninjutsu is very different. So the psychology, the philosophy, the physical, and all that, we're all being taught to be Jonin, heads of our own organizations. Why don't we have more ninja organizations? Because 99.9% of people are focusing on gaining level tactics and just want to be good at fighting while calling it self-defense. Actually, most people just want to earn the black belt so they can say they're a black belt in ninjutsu. What can I tell you? Right. Anything else, James? Did I miss anything?
No, sir.
All right. Well, go to bed. You stay up way too late. All right, guys, that's it. I will talk to you hopefully on Wednesday for Whiteboard Wednesday. If not, I will see you next week on our next episode of Kuden. Get more of Kuden Radio. Subscribe through your favorite podcasting site, or join our clan of serious modern warriors at online